Romanian Eagle. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 651, Paul Merging, Part 2. The Bulgarian government's action against the opposition party has caused an uproar in the country, but because the newspapers and radio stations are strictly controlled by the government, this upheaval is one-sided in support of the government in the country. Many newspapers have published comments criticizing the plot of the opposition party for an armed insurrection. The most fiercely criticized companies have spoken against the merger before, and it seems that their attitudes have changed quite quickly. As for the truth, it doesn't matter, because the government gets the results it wants. As for the public's attitude towards the former opposition party, the attitude of the people has changed greatly. If they had understood it before, they are now disgusted with it. Because Bulgaria's economy is good at the moment, everyone wants to live a stable life. No one wants to go back to the way it was before, and it makes sense for the opposition to be abandoned by it. Unlike domestic voices, which are one-sided, foreign voices are also one-sided, but it is the other way around. Foreign media are basically critical of Bulgaria's practice of sweeping away all opposition parties. They say this is a step backwards in Bulgarian democracy and a reversal of history. Felikov, who led the arrest, is the executioner, and the main messenger behind it, Kirstev, is a political VIP who is destroying the political structure of Bulgaria. But can the voices of foreign public opinion affect Bulgaria? Can or can't? It affects how many people believe the truth abroad, because they think they have the truth. No, that's because these people are only a minority and can't influence the situation in Bulgaria at all. Therefore, the voice of foreign media is irrelevant to Bulgaria. Compared with many waves in Bulgaria, Romania is much better. The Romanian people's attitude towards the merger of the two countries is much more open. For them, because of Romania's strong national strength, it is more appropriate to say annexation rather than merger. However, although the public is optimistic about the merger between the two countries, the government still does not dare to relax. Prime Minister Mihalek then arranged for various officials to strictly control Romanian public opinion and guide it in the direction of a favorable merger. The public opinion monitored by the government also sang praises for the merger. Among them, Romanian Daily, the largest newspaper in Romania, commented on the merger. The merger of Romania and Bulgaria will benefit both countries. Among them, Bulgaria can obtain the dividends of Romania's development, and it can use its position in the kingdom after the merger to provide a centripetal force for the Bulgarians in Macedonia and Thrace, which is beneficial to their prospects for Greater Bulgaria. As for Romania, it can also benefit later. First of all, it can expand its strategic depth. As we all know, most of the Romanian territory is plain, especially when facing the Soviet Union in the east. The terrain is dominated by plains. Romania, which lacks strategic depth and turnover, cannot tolerate any mistakes at all, which is very detrimental to the Romanian division. And now with the Bulgarian mountains, Romania has more leeway in dealing with the Soviet threat. In addition, Bulgaria is located at the crossroads of the Balkans. Romania holds this crossroads and will be more comfortable with exerting influence in the Balkans, and after the merger of the two countries, Romania will be only one step away from the Mediterranean Sea. In the future we have reason to believe that Romanian warships will get their own ports in the Mediterranean. I'm optimistic that Romania will reach deep into the Mediterranean. The report caused an uproar in Romania. It's not that people are worried about unabashed Mediterranean ambitions, but cheers that Romania finally wants to set its sights on the Mediterranean. As Romania's national strength is gradually approaching that of France, the country has long hoped that Romania will show its strength in the world. However, because of Romania's position, they have always had high expectations for rushing out of the Black Sea. After Edel ascended the Bulgarian throne, many people in the country have begun to obsess about the Black Sea Strait. They believed that, as long as the time was right, Bulgaria would have no problem taking Istanbul. However, unlike popular optimism, the Romanian government has never had an accurate positioning for Istanbul. To say Romania doesn't want it here, I want it, I dream it. But this position is not so easy to take. Not to mention the attitudes of Britain, France and other countries. The strength of Turkey alone makes Romania hesitate. Although Turkey's domestic economy is much lower than Romania's, its population of more than 20 million is a big problem. Moreover, there are many mountainous areas in Turkey, and it is easy to form a war of attrition against Turkey. It is not worth Romania to do so for an Istanbul point. This topic has gone too far, and now as time approaches, the attitudes of the two countries towards the merger are becoming more and more distinct. In public opinion, the future after the merger has been well imagined. When the final vote was held, in addition to the two governments, Eda, the co-monarch, stood up and personally called for the people to vote on the merger, and Eda's appeal was immediate. The people of the two countries respected this wise monarch from the bottom of their hearts. Of course, Bulgaria could be a little worse, but in Romania, Eda's words definitely worked. So in the end, Romania has a whopping 87.4% in favor of the merger, while 67.9% in Bulgaria favor the merger. After the announcement of the voting results of the two countries, there was even more cheers. The combined kingdom will also be corrected to the United Kingdom of Bulgaria and Romania, referred to as the Kingdom of Paul. The governments of the two countries will also be merged into one government, in which the post of Prime Minister will remain with Mihalik, while the Bulgarian Prime Minister Kirstv will assume the newly created position of Deputy Prime Minister. Don't think that this position has done a bad job to Kirstv, whose powers are not much lower than that of the Prime Minister. In addition to the government, the parliament will also be merged. In order to make the parliamentary seats equal to the people, Bulgaria has started to cut members before. Now with the merger of the two countries, 35 Bulgarian members will be 158 Romanian members. Form a new parliament. When it comes to the military, it's even simpler. The current Bulgarian army of less than 30,000 will be directly reorganized into 6 divisions together with the armed police. Its equipment and numbers are on par with other divisions. In addition, in order to deal with the reason that the previous Bulgarian army was too involved in politics, the merged military reorganized it. If you want to participate in politics, you must take off your military uniform. If you don't want to take off your military uniform, you must quit all political groups. At the same time, it is strictly forbidden to discuss politics in the military. After this whole set, the political attributes of the original Bulgarian army were completely removed, and the essence of the army was restored. The merger of Romania and Bulgaria affected not only the two kingdoms, but also other countries. Chapter 652 Head of the Romanian Line. 1. The merger of Romania and Bulgaria has caused far less repercussions in the world than the previous German-Austrian merger. On the one hand, the merger of Romania and Bulgaria is much less threatening to other countries. On the other hand, the merger of the Balkan countries is far less impactful than that of Germany and Austria. Therefore, the merger of Bulgaria and Romania has not been given much attention in the world, and people have paid more attention to the merger of Germany and Austria. However, although other countries did not pay enough attention, there is one country that attaches great importance to this, and that is the Soviet Union. As the Soviet Union's number one enemy in Eastern Europe, Romania's every move attracted the Soviet Union's attention. As for the merger of the two countries, how could the Soviet Union ignore it? But in fact, the Soviet Union has no good way to do this, because Romania is not weak, and the relationship between the two countries makes any warnings from the Soviet Union have no effect on it. Not to mention that in the Spanish Civil War, the two countries have not fought each other once or twice, and the new equipment displayed by Romania has made the Soviet Union feel heavy pressure. So unless a war against Romania is waged, it is impossible to prevent this from happening. And will the Soviet Union launch a war with Romania? From the moment Eda ascended the Bulgarian throne, the Soviet Union has lost the possibility of using force. So the Soviet Union at most shouted a few words, but probably not at all about starting a war. In addition to the Soviet Union, there is another country concerned about Romania's move, that is Germany. After the German-Austrian merger sparked the German people's fanatical admiration for Hitler, the German Helm has long since recovered from ecstasy. Now he turns his attention to his next target, the Czech Republic. However, compared with Austria, the Czech Republic is very different. Its domestic ethnic groups are mainly Czechs and Slovaks, and the people of the country do not have very strong feelings for Germany. This is also deemed that Hitler could not march towards the flowers like Austria. Moreover, the Czech military industry is developed. This is also the reason why Hitler valued it, and its military combat effectiveness should not be underestimated. However, the Czech Republic still has weaknesses. It is extremely unfriendly to the Germans in the country, which gives Hitler enough excuses. Moreover, the Germans in the Sudetenland have a very close attitude towards Germany, and they also want to return to Germany. This area was originally a place where the Germans lived for generations. During the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it and Bohemia, where the Czechs lived for generations, came under the rule of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. After the disintegration of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Czechs forcibly occupied the area despite the opposition of the local residents. And in the subsequent Treaty of Saint-Germain, the Czech occupation of the Sudetenland was confirmed by the League of Nations, and Hitler planned to start with this and intervene in Czech affairs. However, this time, compared with the annexation of Austria, to seek the Sudete area, the risk is much greater. So Hitler was also in the Chancellor's office, negotiating to seek more support from allies in the Chancellor's office. Hitler and the top leaders of the party were negotiating Romania. Different from other countries, Germany, with years of military cooperation and a large number of German technicians in Romania, has already discovered Romania's military expansion and preparations, and this negotiation is that Hitler has the idea of getting closer to Romania. Everyone, what do you think about the current Romania? Hitler, the head of state, was the first to ask the others what they thought of Romania. Head of state: I think Romania is strong and needs to be taken seriously by our country, especially on the Czech and Polish issues. It is best for our country to reach a consensus with them. As the newly appointed foreign minister, Ribbentrop took the lead in expounding the importance of Romania to Germany from a diplomatic perspective. And Ribbentrop's speech made many people nod silently. At present, Germany's strength is still slowly recovering, but the fear of Britain and France still exists. So they are eager to find powerful allies, and after turning around in Europe, only Italy and Romania can become their allies. Italy's military strength is limited, and its army is questionable, and the only guarantee is its navy. In this time and space, Italy has built 3 super battleships equipped with 380 calibers. In order to defend Libya's oil, Italy, which was not dragged down by old battleships, started construction on 2 new battleships in 1936. It is equipped with 406 naval guns of the same caliber as Romania, but its armor, speed, cruising distance and other data cannot be compared with Romania's new battleships, but it is still ranked in the world. And Italy not only started 2 new ships, but last year, with the income of Libyan oil, Italy started 2 more ships. When the construction of these 4 super battleships is completed, the strength of the Italian navy will surely be suppressed by Britain and France in the Mediterranean Sea. In response, the French government also started 2 new battleships last year and this year, equipped with 380 caliber main guns, enough to compete with the Italian navy. On the British side, in order to cope with Italy's expanding naval strength, 2 battleships with 380 guns were started in 1937. And also draw 2 battleships from the home fleet to strengthen the Mediterranean fleet. This small climax of shipbuilding triggered by Italy is known as the naval competition before World War II. However, compared with World War I, this naval competition is not worthy of its name. Therefore, Italy, which has a powerful navy, is worth Germany's efforts to win over. As for Romania, unlike Italy, its perennial tension with the Soviet Union has allowed it to ensure a strong army. The strength of this war-hardened army is well known to the German side, which has cooperated with its military for many years. Moreover, the military concepts of the 2 countries have a lot in common. Both use the air force to cover the sky, and the ground uses tanks as the protagonist. Therefore, as for the powerful Romanian army, the German side is discussing in private that the probability of winning the battle with it will not exceed 60%. Because in the Spanish Civil War Germany discovered that its new weapons were no worse than their German counterparts, and were stronger than Germany in many respects. This makes the Germans, who have always thought that they are number 1 in the world, feel a little unacceptable. And Romania's capable navy also made Germany jealous. Its 5 battleships, except Murcia, were all 406 caliber battleships. and through private understanding, this class of battleships exceeded the standard by more than 10,000 tons, who made so many German mechanics in the naval shipyard. This gave Hitler new ideas, so he had more ideas for the Bismarck class of his own navy. First of all, the main gun of this class of battleships must not be lower than 406 calibers, and the speed must not be lower than 31.5 knots, compared to the Romanian Vlad class battleships, and then the large range and independent combat capability point. Since Romania is so powerful, it is obviously not in Germany's interest to be its enemy. Therefore, Germany generally believes that it is possible to talk about cooperation with it, especially under the premise that Poland and Romania have a de facto alliance. Breaking the alliance between the two has become an urgent need for Germany. That's why Ribbentrop's words won so many people's approval. However, although closer relations with Romania are conducive to solving the problems of the Czech Republic and Poland, the German side is still afraid of Romania's powerful strength point mainly in the Balkans. Due to the presence of Romania, German influence has been slow to penetrate. If you really want to get closer to it, then the sphere of influence will inevitably be talked about. At this time, Germany did not overwhelm Romania's strength, otherwise it would make concessions elsewhere. This was a little uncomfortable for Hitler, who was determined to bring Germany to the top of the world, but the situation was stronger than man, and negotiations with Romania were imminent. So, after thinking about it, Hitler said, "I will visit Romania next to discuss the above mentioned issues with the country's king." Edel. Chapter 653 Head of the Romanian Line. 2. On the long Mikhail Avenue, the military and police in neat uniforms stood on both sides of the avenue, and behind them were cheering crowds, who were waving the Romanian flag and the German asterisk in their hands, welcoming the visit of Hitler. The German head of state, who accompanied him by car, to take over the cheers of the crowd was Prime Minister Mihailo K. Hitler waved to the cheering crowd from time to time, which made the welcoming crowd more excited, and the cheers became higher. "I didn't expect the people in your country to be so enthusiastic. I'm really flattered." Hitler also smiled and told Prime Minister Mihailo K. about his feelings. While waving his hands in the face of Hitler's words, Prime Minister Mihailo K. answered politely, "Where? This is the respect of the Romanian people to the head of state for leading Germany to stand up again." The friendship between our two countries can be said to have a long history. Germany has always been our country's most important country. Regarding Germany's previous experience, our people all have considerable sympathy. The words of Prime Minister Mihailo K. touched Hitler a lot, and he continued to speak. "I'm not afraid of your joke. After retiring from the army, I also received relief funds at that time, and I was very clear about the difficulties of the people at that time. At that time, the only thing that helped us was Romania, and the food aided by His Majesty Edel made that the famine-stricken Germany has felt the care from the outside world, which we have never forgotten in Germany." Hitler was talking about Edel's food aid to Germany after the end of the First World War. In the face of Hitler's words, Prime Minister Mihailo K. naturally wouldn't talk about unhappy things, but he said it slowly. "Our two countries have always had close ties in terms of military, economics and trade. As far back as the Kaiser era, the help from Germany enabled Romania to develop adequately in terms of military and economic development. The subsequent economic, trade and military cooperation between the two countries also benefit us all. So there is a deep and close connection between our two countries." What Mihailo said is right, except that Romania joined the Allied powers during World War I. The military and economic ties between Germany and Romania have always been very good, and Germany has always occupied the position of Romania's import and export chief. As for Hitler's trip this time, Romania still has some speculation, but how to talk about this requires Edel to make a decision. So what is our dear Edel Majesty doing? He is now meeting with Japanese Special Envoy Yoshizaburo Nomura, who later served as Japan's ambassador to the United States, and made outstanding contributions to Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. He has only recently retired from the reserve service. In addition to his in-depth research on international law, his appointment as Special Envoy this time has a lot to do with the defeat of the Lanfeng battle that Japan just suffered. Because of the defeat in the Battle of Zhuzhou, more than 30,000 casualties, influenced by Romanian aid, failed to capture the Japanese army that the Chinese army was besieging. and annihilating point quite unhappy. Then they followed the footsteps of the Chinese army's withdrawal in an attempt to retaliate, and they pursued westward to occupy Lanfeng, Guide and other places, while their troops fought with the Chinese troops stationed in the area. The 14th Division of the Japanese Army, led by Kenji Toihara, intended to raid Lanfeng from behind and seize the back road of the Chinese Army. On May 17th, more than 20,000 people from the 14th Division crossed the Yellow River, intending to raid Lanfeng, a strategic location on the Langhe Line, to cut off the Chinese army's back path. Facing the 14th Division's approach to Lanfeng, the Chinese side was shocked. However, considering that the enemy was advancing alone, a battle plan to encircle and wipe out the 14th Division near Lanfeng was launched. So the Chinese side dispatched troops and prepared to kill Kenji Toihara in Lanfeng. So the 74th Army, the 64th Army, the 27th Army, and the 71st Army, more than 100,000 troops began to prepare to encircle the 14th Division. Considering the tight time and heavy tasks in this battle, the commanding department also urgently transferred the 43rd Army, its dearest darling, from Kaifeng to Lanfeng. Maybe you don't know much about the 43rd Army, but you are absolutely familiar with the commander of the 43rd Army. Its commander is Du Yuming. After receiving more than 100 Jackal 4th tanks and self-propelled artillery supplements from Romania, the 204th Division, which was trained by the Armored Corps, belongs to the Army configuration. In addition to the 202th Division of the Armored Forces, the 43rd Army also consists of the 127th Division and the 79th Division. In order to keep up with the footsteps of the armored troops, these two divisions are equipped with bicycles, which can be regarded as human-powered motorcycle divisions due to the need to be familiar with and cooperate with tank operations. The army missed the Sanghu and Zhou battles before. Until now, the High Command decided to release its trump card and deal a devastating blow to the arrogant 14th Division. Therefore, in the battle, the 43rd Army was used as the arrow, supplemented by the 27th Army and the 64th Army, and the 14th Division was hit like a hammer on the waist of the 14th Division. The Japanese army was also panicked by the sudden attack of the tank. The Dading tank it was equipped with was not an opponent of the Jackal 4th at all, and its anti-tank capability was very limited. Therefore, the underestimated Japanese army collapsed, and a large number of Japanese troops fled, and abandoned guns, artillery, ammunition, and vehicles were thrown everywhere. Let the 27th Army and the 64th Army who followed the battle smile happily. As for the expelled Japanese army, it was divided into three parts that were not connected. The results of the 43rd Army greatly encouraged the Chinese army. Next, facing the Japanese army, which was divided into three parts, lacking guns and ammunition, the Chinese army immediately launched a series of attacks one after another, without giving the opponent any respite at all. In the face of the 14th Division, which suffered a crushing defeat, the Japanese army will of course not give up. Its 10th Division, 16th Division, and the mixed 3rd and 5th Brigades are desperately trying to break through the obstacles and rescue the 14th Division, that was struggling. However, under the desperate obstruction of the Chinese army, they could not make a breakthrough at all. And all the units of the 14th Division were aware of the pressure on the periphery, and their offensive was even more ferocious. And, in order to ensure this battle, the Air Force put all the 46 Albatros fighter jets currently available into this battle. As the most advanced fighter aircraft of its Air Force, the Albatros has a great reputation in the sky of the Far East, and many Japanese pilots have a very deep image of it. And this time, in order to protect the smooth battle of Lanfeng, this can be regarded as a homage of the Air Force. Therefore, when the ground battle is in full swing, the sky is also experiencing a desperate struggle. As for the officers and soldiers of the defending 14th Division, after losing a lot of heavy firepower and falling into a desperate situation, although they struggled to resist the fierce attack of the Chinese army, but in the end, in the face of the overwhelmingly dominant Chinese army, failure is inevitable. First, the Japanese army in Luoyanghe was defeated, then the Japanese army in Guxingji was annihilated, and finally the Japanese army received a farewell telegram from Sanaizhe, which made the Japanese army fall into an extremely disappointed mood. In the end, only more than 2,000 people from the 14th Division escaped and ascended to heaven, and the division leader Kenji Doihara was killed. In the face of the fact that a division commander died in battle and nearly 20,000 people died, it made Japan more urgent to cut off China's foreign aid. So this time Nomura Yoshizaburo's mission is very important point, because compared with Germany, Romania's military assistance against the Republic of China in the war was more important. Ordnance decommissioned from the Romanian army was continuously imported from Annan and Guangzhou by sea, supplementing its losses, which once gave Japan the idea of killing at sea. But considering the consequences of angering Romania, Japan backed off. So this time, Japan is also fully prepared. I saw Nomura Yoshizaburo said quite politely, "Your Majesty Edel, the war in the Far East is a very unfavorable situation for the world. Our country has not thought of overthrowing the Chiang government, but because the government is deeply influenced by communism, our country only wants to punish it. No thinking of such a big reaction. Our country is also involuntarily involved in this war." Edel looked at Special Envoy Nomura Yoshizaburo, who was talking nonsense in front of him, and he didn't speak until he finished speaking. "Mr. Special Envoy, I don't think it's more than a dispute about who is right and who is wrong in this war. I also know the purpose of your country's visit this time. But this condition cannot meet the needs of our country at all. So expensive the country's request, we cannot agree to it." Eda has already seen the conditions for Japan to stop Romania from providing assistance to the Republic of China, and I have to say that Japan's stingy side is vividly displayed above. Compared with the profits of nearly 200 million lei that the Republic of China can bring to Romania every year, the conditions given by Japan only give a profit of 40 to 50 million, mainly because Japan purchases materials from Romania. In the face of Edel's rejection, Nomura Yoshizaburo was not angry at all, because his reliance did not come from this. I saw him take out a document and hand it to Edel to speak. "This is a picture taken by our country. It shows that the Soviet Union has appeared in the Republic of China. They are slowly replacing your country and Germany, and they are playing an important role." That's right. This is the trump card of Nomura Yoshizaburo, because Japan is very aware of Romania's inaction with the Soviet Union, and as long as the Republic of China has Soviet assistance or even an advisory group, Romania will never agree. Because the Romanian people will not agree, even if the country has interests, it will not share the interests of the Republic of China with its enemy, the Soviet Union. So this is the key that Nomura Yoshizaburo feels can persuade Romania. Sure enough, Nomura Yoshizaburo's words silenced Edel. In fact, he knew about the Soviet aid. From December 1, 1937, the Soviet Union assisted the Republic of China with pilots, intending to use the Republic of China to contain Japan and reduce the pressure on the Far East. But in 1938, the aid of the Soviet Union began to increase sharply, mainly because the Republic of China consumed too much, and some were hungry. Which made Germany the first to express dissatisfaction. Hitler, who was visiting for this reason, complained abnormally about it. At a deeper level, it is more that Germany needs to choose between China and Japan. Romania actually needs to make a choice, but Edel's love for his motherland in his previous life made him deliberately suppress this choice. However, as Nomura Yoshizaburo made the topic clear, Edel knew that this choice had to be made, so he picked up this photo of the Soviet Union and the Republic of China soldiers, looked at it and said, "Thank you, Your Excellency Special Envoy, for giving me this photo. But we still need to discuss your country's plan." And Nomura Yoshizaburo was prepared for Edel's words, knowing that this kind of thing could not be agreed immediately. However, he knew that this time, there was already a 6-layered success. This is a big victory for Japan, knowing that every request from Japan has been directly blocked back. After sending the Japanese Special Envoy Yoshizaburo Nomura away, Edel picked up this photo and felt a lot. He said something silently in his heart. "I can only help here, my dear country." After speaking, Edel immediately called a guard. Go and invite Ambassador ZHU immediately. I have something to look for him. When Ambassador ZHU arrived in a hurry, he saw Edel playing with a photo. I don't know, Your Majesty Edel, do you have anything to do with me this time? Looking at Ambassador ZHU in front of him, Edel put the photo in front of him. Your country is in contact with the Soviet Union. Edel's words flashed a trace of panic in Ambassador ZHU's eyes. He is different from people in China. He has been in Romania for many years and knows that this country is disgusted with the Soviet Union. So he hastily denied it. Your Majesty is joking. This is just a photo from the Soviet Union's visit before. Okay, don't lie to me. Edel interrupted the other party's words and continued. From November last year to January this year, the Soviet Union has dispatched a flight group to the Republic of China 3 times. As far as I know, the first batch of aid your country received from the Soviet Union in March was arms worth $50 million. Hearing Edel's exact statement of the time and scale of aid, ZHU Jialuo knew that, although he did not know the domestic and Soviet aid plans, he knew that he could not continue to deny it, otherwise things would get worse. I saw him speak. Your Majesty, I don't know much about this situation. But please believe that our country has always been grateful to Romania. Our country's current war with Japan has caused too many losses and consumption. In order to ensure that our country is not oppressed by the Japanese aggressors. No, don't do something that goes against the original intention. When ZHU Jialuo was talking, he was also carefully observing Edel's expression, but unfortunately, His Majesty was expressionless throughout the whole process. Edel did not speak until Ambassador ZHU finished speaking. As for the arms contract that you sent to purchase last time, we will prepare it for you as soon as possible. But this is the last arms sale of our country to your country. Next, our country will have its own considerations. When Ambassador ZHU Jialuo walked out of the palace, his face was completely pale. The driver hurried up to grab him. Ambassador, what's wrong with you? Ambassador ZHU Jialuo, who was called back to God by the driver, held the driver's hand tightly and said hurriedly, hurry back to the embassy. I have an emergency to report to the country. The reason for ZHU Jialuo's gaffe is that Romania's relations with China have undergone tremendous changes. The reason is the assistance of the Soviet Union, which made Romania decide to stop continuing arms sales to China. How can this not make him gaffe? The Republic of China successively obtained equipment of more than 300,000 people from Romania. Although most of these equipments are second-hand and outdated, they are only outdated in Europe. In terms of confrontation, only elite troops can obtain these equipments, and relying on Romanian weapons and equipment, the Republic of China was able to maintain its combat effectiveness after the Battle of Hohenzollern. Now with the cut-off of Romanian aid, the situation of the War of Resistance is about to change. You must know that the government just sent a telegram to itself before coming here, asking you to find a way to get a batch of aid from Romania, because the Wuhan battle is about to break out, and the Republic of China cannot do without it. Cheap arms from Romania. In June 1938, Romania decided to terminate arms sales to China, and the arms sales contracts signed before will continue to be shipped. And Ambassador ZHU Jialuo's move to sign a batch of supplies worth 70 million lei such as tanks, armored vehicles, and planes the day before has won him a lot of praise in China. However, for the War of Resistance, difficult times are coming. I hope they will be well equipped. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 654 Head of the Romanian Trip, 3. In the test site, a tank was driving rapidly in the complex field. It plunged into half-meter deep water, then drove out energetically, and then climbed up to a high point effortless, and then crossed through a ditch. The next step is a completely simulated battlefield environment. Trenches distributed like spider webs, various sandbags built up, wooden steel bars and other materials that are messed up, plus a bunker in the distance. It seems that there is no difference between coming and the battlefield. They are also messy. The people at the observation platform were paying close attention to the performance of the tank. I saw that this tank effortless crossed the trenches, pressed the supported wood and steel bars and other materials, and pushed down the built sandbags, like a fearless steel warrior, and used its incomparably powerful main gun, named the bunker in turn point. It's amazing. It's amazing. After Hitler at the observatory put down the telescope in his hand, he couldn't help but praise the tank's performance, and his words made the accompanying German officers feel hot on their faces. Compared with the Romanian R-20 tank, the number 3 and number 4 tanks being developed by Germany are completely unreadable. Because the armored firepower of number 3 and number 4, which has not yet been finalized, is completely unmatched by the R-20 tank. Although influenced by Romania, the number 3 and number 4 currently under development in Germany are much stronger than in history, but their maximum data of 18 tons, no 3, and 25 tons, no 4, limits armor and firepower. Moreover, the two tanks are also divided into functions, one anti-tank, no 3, and one anti-infantry, no 4, and from the information learned from Romania, the armor of the R-20 tank it is equipped with is far from being penetrated by the 50mm anti-tank gun it is equipped with on number 3. And the number 4, which has a larger tonnage, is equipped with a 75mm main gun, but the short tube 75mm has worse breakdown performance against the tank. At this time, the German officers present discovered that they had not yet had a finalized tank, and that none of them was a Romanian opponent. This made the German officers feel very embarrassed. There was a big killer that they secretly prepared to deal with the enemy. As a result, the weapon that the other party unintentionally revealed was better than their own. If you count it carefully, you will be beaten up. Although Romania is not a German target, the situation is similar, and they are all possible threats in the future. And Hitler didn't know that the tanks he was developing were already lagging behind other countries. If it weren't for being in Romania, he would have even wished to scold these officers fiercely, so that these arrogant junkers officers like us one would have a good look and know about Germany's backwardness and new weapons and equipment. As for General Guderian, who proposed the new tank index, he was right behind Hitler, but his face was redder than a monkey's ass, and he even wished that there would be a seam on the ground to allow him to get in. Because the German tank indicators are developed by themselves, the Romanian tank indicators were formulated by General Hoffmann. From this tank indicator, he is behind. If the two countries really want to go to the battlefield, their own tank troops are definitely not the opponents of the tank troops commanded by Hoffmann. Although the tank unit cannot only talk about tank performance, but also has officers and soldiers training, understanding of tactical concepts, etc. But he has communicated in Romania for several years, and he is very clear about the capabilities of Romanian armored forces. Not weaker than Germany, and some of the Romanian armored units that have experienced the war are stronger than their own armored units. After watching the performance of the R-20 tank, Admiral Ploiesti, the chief of the general staff who led the team, said to Hitler in front of him, "Your Excellency, our army also has a heavy tank. I don't know if you want to see it. Why did Admiral Ploiesti lead Hitler to watch Romania's new equipment, which had instructions from Edel? Because Romania is no better than itself about Germany's combat effectiveness. It can be said that even the Germans themselves don't know how strong their explosive combat effectiveness is in order to make Germany pay more attention to Romania and gain more advantages in the future competition for interests. Edel fully displayed Romania's strength so as to avoid misjudgment between the two countries and lay a good foundation for the next peace talks. As for Hitler not knowing this, it's simply impossible. As the greatest statesman before the Second World War, he knew this all too well, but Romania's display of strength really surprised him, because Romania's performance was clearly ready for war. So of course he doesn't mind being able to intuitively understand Romania's strength. So, accompanied by Admiral Ploiesti, after the R-20 tank left the field, a more majestic tank appeared in front of everyone. This is my country's heavy-duty tank R-30. Its height is 2.75 meters, its width is 3.12 meters, and its length is 7.81 meters. The total weight is 47.6 tons. The maximum speed is 46 km per hour. Road. The cross-country speed is 19 to 23 km per hour, and it is equipped with a door of 88 mm 52 times. Tank guns. In fact, in the earliest choice of the main gun, the military as the user was very embarrassed, because the earliest military idea was to use the 105 caliber as the main gun of choice, forming a clear gap with the R-20's 75mm main gun point. However, due to the difficulty of developing the 105 tank gun, there is number 105 tank gun that can be installed in the R-30 tank. The military had to find a replacement, and the 88mm anti-tank gun was chosen. It was an 88mm gun originally used as an anti-aircraft gun. It was accidentally discovered that it was equipped with armor-piercing projectiles, and it had a particularly strong penetrating power to armor. Therefore, in line with the principle of taking it, the 88mm anti-aircraft gun was equipped on the tank without business. However, the 88mm tank gun equipped on the R-30 tank is much more optimized than the anti-aircraft gun, mainly to reduce weight, reduce multiples and reduce recoil. The 88mm gun, which has undergone 7 changes and 8 changes, unexpectedly appeared in front of everyone. Therefore, after a brief introduction by Admiral Farid, the German officers on the scene immediately raised their telescopes to observe this heavy tank during the period. Heavy tanks existed during World War I. In the early days of tanks, there was a flurry of demons, and all kinds of tanks could be seen. Not to mention the speechless Tsar tank. Germany alone has developed the K-Wagen heavy tank weighing 150 tons, and France is not far behind. They developed the FCM-2C super heavy tank, which is also the only mass-produced super heavy tank. Its weight of up to 94 tons has never been surpassed by its younger generation. The FCM-2C, like an armored train, is still in France. Serving in the military, it shines brightly. If you are interested, you can go to beta yourself. However, after the end of World War I, heavy tanks were basically put into the garbage heap, because these expensive toys were simply impractical. As the third heaviest tank in the world known at present, except for the French Grandfather and the Soviet T-35 in front of it, it has also been introduced so grandly by the Romanian army, so this R-30 heavy tank must have its own advantages. Chapter 655 Head of the Romanian Line. 4. A day's visit makes everyone feel tired, but when they are tired, they also need to finish their work first. For this visit, the German officers present felt that there is a real world. They used to think that their military concepts and weapons and equipment were first class, but after visiting Romanian tanks, they had a gap in their psychology. They did not expect Romania to develop so quickly without a sound, which opened their eyes. While the officers were writing their analysis of the Romanian military, Guderian was called by the head of state alone. The other officers were both envious and relieved for the founder of this armored corps, who was valued by the Führer. Envy is because he is valued by the head of state, and he is relieved because he will be reprimanded for this summoning point. But they were disappointed. Hitler called Guderian over and did not scold him, but calmly discussed with him. General Guderian, does our country's new tank indicators need to be changed? There is a big gap with Romania's performance. In fact, Hitler did not talk about it, and Guderian also planned to find his own head of state to modify the indicators of the new tank. So he replied, Führer, the indicators of the new tank must be changed. It is my underestimation of the development of the tank, which makes the new tank face a backward situation before it is finalized. For Guderian's self-blame, Hitler instead encouraged his confidant in front of him. It doesn't matter. This is very beneficial to the development of our armored forces. At least let us know that our tanks are not advanced at all. After comforting Guderian, Hitler continued to ask, so what should we do with the tanks we are currently developing? After thinking for a long time, Guderian spoke his thoughts. At present, both of our tanks need to be changed, but it seems that the performance of the number 3 tank is not much changed. The main focus needs to be on the number 4. The limit of 25 tons that I set before needs to be strengthened. At least let it be equipped 75mm tank gun for anti-tank operations. As for tanks for infantry operations, I have an idea, but I will have to wait until I visit a Romanian general. Guderian said this, and the scene of working with him appeared in his mind. He learned too much from this person, and thought he was capable of competing with him. Who knows that in the research and development of new tanks, he has another move point as it General Hoffmann. Hitler, who knew a lot about Guderian's experience, immediately said his name. Yes. Führer facing Hitler's questioning, Guderian immediately admitted losing to this General Hoffmann. There is nothing to say. As far as I know, this General Hoffmann is also of German descent, both noble Aryans, so it's no big deal for you to lose to a fellow. Hitler is good at everything, but he is always advocating the Aryans, which sometimes makes Guderian feel a little unnatural at times. Although I'm also a German, I have not really studied the Aryans, but since the Führer said that the Germans are all from the noble Aryans, so let's just say so. I'll talk. The Germans have just finished visiting Romania's new tanks. There are still many tasks ahead. In addition to visiting military weapons such as aircraft and warships, they also need to learn about Romania's industry and agriculture. However, these have little to do with Guderian, because he needs to visit General Hoffmann next, and I believe this visit will benefit both of them a lot. When Guderian came to the Romanian Armed Forces Command, he could see General Hoffmann standing here from a distance. As soon as the car stopped, Guderian couldn't wait to get out. Seeing Guderian coming out, Hoffmann stepped forward and held his hand. Long time no see, Guderian. I heard you did a good job in Germany. Long time no see, General Hoffmann, but I still can't compare to you. Facing the half teacher and half friend in front of him, Guderian felt a lot. In the silent confrontation between himself and the one in front of him, he lost the next city, but he would not give up just like that. Thinking of his lack of foresight about the future of tanks, Guderian felt that he needed to communicate with his good students. Guderian is no stranger to Hoffmann's office, and many of the two people's ideas were inadvertently generated during discussions in this office. Therefore, Guderian still has his own feelings for here. It's still the same. It's still so familiar. It's still so rudimentary. Even the holes burned by cigarette butts are still there. I remember we were discussing how infantry should deal with enemy tanks. Guderian sat on the sofa and couldn't help but talk about the past. Hoffmann handed a cup of coffee to Guderian and asked, "Tell me, what do you want to know this time?" Facing Hoffmann's straightforward approach, Guderian couldn't help complaining. "Can't I reminisce about the past with emotion? You're not that kind of person." Hoffmann's words made Guderian laugh. Ha ha ha, Hoffmann, you haven't changed at all. You're still so direct. Seeing Hoffmann staring at himself without speaking, Guderian, who couldn't stand it, couldn't help it. "Well, I do have a question to discuss with you this time." Speaking in the face of Hoffmann, who cherishes words like gold, Guderian said his problems. "I have seen 3 tanks developed according to your requirements. I found that they are all prepared for anti-armor and vehicles. There is no special tank for anti-infantry. I wonder what you think about it." Listening to Guderian talking about the tank question, Hoffmann took a sip of coffee and answered the question. "As for the use of tanks, I think you are also aware of it. But I think that with the development of the times, the model of dividing tanks into infantry tanks and armored combat tanks will inevitably change. Especially as tanks are becoming more and more advanced, and 3 vital indicators of fire protection speed are also improving." Hoffmann continued to give an example. For example, the R-20 tank in our country, the 75mm main gun it is equipped with is not only good for the tank's attack on the infantry. Although this does not reduce the cost of the tank, it also allows the tank to be on the battlefield at any time, able to deal with various emergencies. This is a crucial point that infantry tanks cannot have, or lack. Of course Guderian could understand Hoffmann's words. "You mean the quality of the tank is more important than the quantity?" Of course, but the gap between quantity and quality should not be too large. It is best not to exceed 3 to 1, and the limit should not exceed 5 to 1. Otherwise, the advantage of quantity will be enough to overwhelm quality. Of course, this is the case where the quality gap cannot have a generational difference, or else most are just living coffins. It is clear that Hoffmann has given sufficient consideration to the quality and quantity of tanks, and his words have inspired Guderian a lot on the development of tanks. and in his heart, Guderian has a new idea of the current development of German tanks next. The two continued to discuss the theory of tank operations and the idea of coordinated infantry operations. The conversation between the two did not end until the beginning of Huadeng point in the end. Guderian still felt a little unhappy, and I saw him continue to say, "General Hoffman, let's continue our discussions tomorrow. No problem." Chapter 656 Head of the Romanian Line, 5. Hello, Your Majesty. Edel. Hello, Führer Hitler in the palace. Hitler, who had finished visiting Romania, finally came to visit Edel. Both sides have high expectations for the meeting between the leaders of the two countries. His Majesty Edel, we met again. Now I think of the meeting in Munich, just like yesterday. I still remember what His Majesty said to me at that time after the guest of honor was seated. Hitler opened his mouth to talk about the scene where the two met for the first time. In the face of Hitler's words, Edel took over. The events at that time were too fleeting, and I remember your wish at that time was to save the suffering German people and bring them back to normal countries. At present, the unemployment rate in Germany is almost eliminated, and the economy it's growing so fast. It's a miracle in Europe. When Edel talked about the development of Germany over the years, Hitler naturally knew what to say. This is all done by the German people under the leadership of the government. The German people's expectations of the government kept me awake at night. Fortunately, there are many like-minded people who helped me, and I finally lived up to their expectations after being modest. Hitler began to talk about the development of Romania. Compared with the development of our country, Romania is a model for Europe. Romania has always been on the front line of fighting against the evil country of the Soviet Union. At that time, if Romania had not helped Poland, it would not have been able to stop the Soviet army, which would have posed a huge threat to the European order. I think this is admirable for your country's silent efforts. Moreover, your country's development has not fallen behind over the years, and now its economic strength is close to that of France, so compared with your country, my country's development is nothing. What Hitler said was the consensus in Europe. Because the Polish territory in this time and space is smaller than in history, and more Soviet troops attacked. Many military experts believe that without Romanian reinforcement, Poland alone is powerless to resist. Even the deceased Polish army commander Piłsudski thinks so. So this is not Hitler's touting of Romania, but I saw his voice change. However, Poland's military power is currently out of balance with the Soviet Union, which is very detrimental to Europe. The evil Soviet Union's attempts to Europe have never been ignored, and the Spanish Civil War is very telling. That's right. This is the first mission of Hitler's visit, to break up the Polo Alliance. Although this covenant is only aimed at the Soviet Union, it is possible to turn to Germany if it is done a lot. Moreover, in the West, Prussia and other former German territories currently occupied by Poland. After Hitler solved the Czech Republic, the next target was the Poles. So it was more important to solve the Polo Alliance in advance than anything else. And in this time and space, there is no small pressure on Germany's east and west fronts. There is the British-French alliance in the west and the Baltic alliance in the east. In previous domestic discussions, it was generally believed that it was the easiest to dismantle the Baltic alliance on the eastern front, and that the alliance was not as difficult as Britain and France to dismantle them with Germany's own strength. The meaning of Hitler's words. Edel did not understand the truth. However, although Romania was also trying to get rid of the Polo Alliance, Hitler didn't know it, so the imbalance of information gave Edel the option of making an offer. Moreover, Germany is still seeking Romania on the Czech issue, which is more beneficial to Edel. I saw him speak. Our country has resisted the threat of the Soviet Union together with Poland for more than 10 years. Although it is somewhat difficult to resist the increasingly powerful Soviet Union, we should not have any doubts about its determination to fight the Soviet Union. Obviously, Edel was sitting on the Ploiesti station and waiting for Hitler to make an offer. And Hitler is naturally very clear, but unlike Romania, Germany can't afford it at present, especially not to dismantle the Polo Alliance, making Hitler hesitant to put pressure on the Czech Republic. So Hitler decided to give his own terms first. Although the Baltic Alliance is still blocking the Soviet Union's ambitions for Europe, I think this alliance has become more and more difficult. As a responsible power, Germany also intends to contribute to the fight against the Soviet Union. I think joining Germany it can play a better role in fighting the Soviet Union. Point 2 People with ghosts at heart are using the fight against the Soviet Union as an excuse to seek the interests of their respective countries. Since Hitler was so keen to join this alliance, Edel naturally could not refuse the other party's good intentions. I saw Edel continued to speak. Your Excellency, Germany is so enthusiastic about fighting the Soviet Union, so why should we refuse it? After seeing Edel agreeing to Germany to join the alliance, I saw Hitler continue to speak. Many Germans currently live outside Germany, where they have lived and thrived for generations. But these people are treated as a minority by the host country for some historical reasons. They were discriminated against and abused. Their homes were demolished by the thugs, and their personalities were thrown to the ground and trampled on. As the motherland of the Germans, we cannot stand idly by. We are going to change the various injustices of the Germans in these areas and let them obtain their own rights and obligations. Therefore, our country has the obligation and responsibility to help them. Edel knew that this was the condition for joining the alliance that Hitler said, and he continued to ask in a deaf and dumb manner. For these Germans living abroad, what the Führer means is, these exiled Germans must be treated properly. As for the Germans in the Czech Republic, because of their dissatisfaction with the Czech government's oppression, they should be resolved first. Therefore, I suggest that the Sudetenland region in the Czech Republic, where Germans occupy the majority, should be dealt with first. In a referendum, it is up to them to choose whether to remain obedient to the Czech government or govern themselves, or return to Germany. Hitler's referendum is indeed a common way of dealing with ethnic disputes in Europe at present. However, Edel knew that the Germans in the Sudetenland were very closely connected with the German side. Since 1933, the party headed by Konrad Henlein has continuously demanded the right to self-government in the Sudetenland. As long as there is a referendum in the region, then Germany has a chance to intervene. Moreover, the Sudetenland area is also the front line of the Czech defense against German invasion. The fortifications built by using the mountains are enough to give Germany a headache. That's right. No matter in history, or in the present time and space, Germany's plans for the Czech Republic have never changed. That is to take the Czech Republic, the heavy industrial base of the former Austro-Hungarian Empire, and let it serve Germany's military expansion. It's just that Germany currently needs to be concerned about the feelings of other countries, mainly Britain, France, Italy, and Romania. Facing what Hitler said, Edel sighed in his heart that he didn't want the Sudetenland. The previous alliances are all paving the way for this, and the alliance with Romania can also target the future Poland, which is really a good calculation. But Edel is not bad. He has a pit waiting for the Germans to jump. I saw Edel speak. We have high sympathy for the Germans in the Sudetenland region of the Czech Republic who were oppressed by the government. However, for the referendum in the region, we think it is best to negotiate a solution. In the face of Edel's disapproval of Germany's annexation of the Sudetenland, Hitler could smell different meanings. It is best to negotiate a settlement, which means that Romania has no objection to Germany's move. Of course, this is also a conceptual vocabulary. As an outstanding statesman, Hitler knew that this was Romania, and then waited for him to negotiate the conditions. Since it is to discuss conditions, then there is a door to this matter, I saw Hitler say, after brewing in his heart. Romania's development over the years is amazing. I saw in Lviv that it is not inferior to our country's Ruhr region. In just over 20 years, Romania has developed from a small Balkan country to a powerful country. I think in addition to the efforts of the people and the government of your country, the efforts of His Majesty Edel are also inseparable. So, I wonder what His Majesty thinks of Romania's status in Europe. Of course, move a small bench to sit and watch. Edel, who was naughty in his heart, knew that it was Hitler asking himself to open up conditions, so he said sternly, who was already prepared in his heart, our country is just a Balkan country, so our interests are only in the Balkans. However, the current Hungarian public opinion is a little unfriendly to our country, which makes me very worried. In addition, you also know that I'm the monarch of Bulgaria, and I'm very concerned about the territory lost by Bulgaria after the First World War, so my country hopes that Germany can support us and make a request for the return of the original Bulgarian territory occupied by Greece. Edda's words shocked Hitler, and he also had a reasonable explanation for Romania's military expansion, which was prepared for Greece. Moreover, Romania took advantage of its own attempts against the Czech Republic to seize the northern territories of Greece for Romania. Hitler, who was a little confused at the moment, replied without changing his face. Sorry, His Majesty Edel's matter is very important. I need to discuss it. No problem. We can discuss this at our next meeting. Facing Hitler's demands, Edel didn't mind at all, because Germany needed the other side more than Romania. And Hitler left in a hurry after Edel finished speaking. He urgently needed to find the accompanying foreign minister Ribbentrop to discuss the news, because it really mattered a lot to Germany. Chapter 657, The Drow Alliance. In a secret room in the German embassy, Hitler was discussing the conditions that Edel said today with Foreign Minister Ribbentrop. Why choose the embassy? That is because the German embassy is currently the most reassuring place for Hitler. This matter is too crucial for Germany to fail. Therefore, in this secret room, apart from Hitler and Ribbentrop, not even the ambassadors are qualified to enter. I saw Hitler talking to his foreign minister. Today, when I was talking with Edel about supporting our country in the Czech Republic, Edel proposed to raise objections to the former Bulgaria occupied by Greece according to the Peace Treaty. Romanians want access to Mediterranean ports. As soon as Hitler finished speaking, Ribbentrop blurted out. It is not necessary to think about it at all. Romania proposed that Greece should return the Bulgarian territory occupied by the Peace Treaty of Neuilly for the port of Thessaloniki, the second largest port in Greece, carrying the export of people and goods from Thrace and Macedonia, is extremely important. The water depth of the port reaches 20 meters, which is completely suitable for Romanian overstandard battleships to dock. And the water area is also good enough to hold the current Romanian main fleet. So it's not surprising that Romania has a peeping heart, not to mention that they have Bulgarian excuses. Although the two countries have merged, everything in Bulgaria has been inherited by the United Kingdom. In the world, it is generally called Romania, which makes Romania's heart of peeping on the Mediterranean shores. Although both of them knew about Romania's ambitions, the Romanians' mind tying the Greek and Czech issues together made Hitler a little undecided. Although if he agreed, Germany and Romania would form a close alliance, and their strength would be greatly increased. But this also complicates the problem, because this will not only be a Czech problem, but also a Greek problem. Although Hitler concluded that Britain and France did not dare to go to war with Germany if there were too many benefits to be surrendered, the views of the people in Britain and France would change. But the alliance with Romania is indeed full of temptations. Germany can not only get a good helper for solving the Czech and even Polish problems, but also a good helper in the face of the Soviet Union. Hitler knew very well why Romania would die with the Soviet Union. The dispute between the two countries over Ukraine is a dead end, and it will certainly run through the focus of the two countries' diplomacy. In fact, Hitler was also somewhat envious of Ukraine, the only black fertile soil in Europe, as well as resources such as coal and iron, or for the development of heavy industry. If Germany was not too far away. In addition, Germany already has the rare coal and iron mine, so he also wants to get in on the second highest heavy industry base in Europe. But now he doesn't want to arouse hostility between the two countries, so he has no idea about it at all. Thinking of this, Hitler couldn't help but say, Ribbentrop, what do you think of the proposal for Romania? For Ribbentrop, Hitler placed great trust in this foreign minister, whom he called Bismarck II. When Hitler hesitated, he wanted to hear the advice of this man. In the face of Hitler's inquiry, Ribbentrop knew that this matter had a huge impact on Germany, but after some careful consideration, he opened his mouth to express his advice. Head of state, I think the advantages of an alliance with Romania are even greater. Although we need to take some risks now, for the future, Romania is an indispensable ally of our country. There is also little conflict with our country in terms of interests. Romania is a more suitable ally. That's right. Ribbentrop's rational analysis believes that Romania is the most suitable ally for Germany at present. It can not only help Germany keep the Soviet Union in check, but also help the Czech Republic and the future Poland issue. Even if there is a war in the future, it can also help Germany, supported by German military forces. Although Germany may also be drawn into the war by Romania, the only threat to Romania is the Soviet Union. However, unless the Romanians are crazy, it is impossible for them to take the initiative to attack the Soviet Union without Germany's consent. In the face of the stronger alliance of roads, the Soviet Union still dared to take the initiative to attack. I'm afraid that Stalin believed in the **** religion and was blessed by Allah. In the face of Ribbentrop's rational analysis, it still made Hitler feel a little unhappy because since he was the Führer, he has always benefited from others. However, Hitler was a politician after all, and he was unhappy in his heart. He was still able to accept what Germany could profit from, although this time from the Romanians can only be regarded as mutually beneficial, and Germany will also pay, but the alliance with Romania is indeed very beneficial to Germany. Hitler's visit these days gave him a good understanding of Romania's military strength. Its strength is not much weaker than that of France, and in some respects it is stronger than France. Such an additional force, a mentally adjusted Hitler now wants to incorporate into German strategy. As for the little unpleasantness before, he had long forgotten. For the sake of Germany, there is nothing that cannot be abandoned. Hitler, who wanted to understand, said, "You're right, the alliance with the Romanians is very beneficial to our country. Then it's worth doing, but the Romanians don't want to take advantage of us." As Hitler made up his mind, so did the pace of negotiations in the second meeting with Edel. Hitler agreed to Romania's demands in northern Greece, but in exchange Romania would also support Germany's demands in the Czech Republic. In addition, the two countries are still reaching a consensus on Red Russia. The two countries will form an alliance to jointly deal with the possible threat of the Soviet Union, and, as long as the Soviet Union starts a war against one of the two countries, the other will give all assistance, including military force, including a declaration of war. This was a step further than the previous Lobo League, and it also marked the end of the Lobo League, as the terms of the Lobo League were not worth maintaining in Romania compared to the more favorable Road League. In addition, in the negotiations between the two countries, Poland was completely forgotten, and in this clause, the only place where Poland appeared is when Germany and Poland conflict. Romania will give priority to complying with the Rhodes Alliance. With Edel and Hitler signing the terms, it marked the official establishment of the German alliance. In addition to Germany addressing the threat from the east, Romania was also able to gather more troops from the Soviet Union to Bulgaria. Chapter 658 The Greek Crisis. When the ink was dry on the terms of the alliance signed with Germany, public opinion from Romania broke out. They published stories about Bulgarians in Greece being oppressed by the government, and many newspapers also published pictures of local Bulgarians being beaten by Greeks. One of the most cited is a Bulgarian woman with a bruised face sitting on the ground, holding a crying little girl in her arms, while next to them stood several Greek teenagers with fierce faces. This photo completely detonated the anger of the Romanian people. They expressed their opinions and demanded that the government provide protection for these poor people. In the former Bulgarian territory, the people were even more angry, and they took to the streets to demand that the government take decisive measures against Greece to protect these Bulgarians abroad. At the same time, outside the Greek embassy, demonstrators crowded the place, asking them to burn the Greek flag, throw paint, rotten eggs, stones and everything else that could be thrown at the embassy. This made the Greek embassy a mess, and at the same time the unpleasant smell could not be dissipated for a long time, so that the staff in the embassy were not in the mood to work. For this reason, the Greek ambassador, Aristine, protested to the Romanian government, but in exchange, he asked him to remain calm. At the height of popular anger, Romania summoned the ambassador as the Romanian foreign minister. Costel looked at the Greek ambassador with cold eyes. "Ambassador Aristine, this is a diplomatic letter from our country. Regarding the above request, please reply within 3 days." Costel handed the letter to the Greek ambassador in front of him and left without looking back, leaving only the Aristine ambassador here. This is Romania's response to the oppression of Bulgarians in Greece, which also represents Romania's attitude. However, the attitude of Costel just now made Ambassador Aristine feel frightened. When he opened the photo and looked at its contents, He was speechless. In fact, there are not many of the above. It is nothing more than the terms of apology and compensation for these Bulgarians, but there is one most critical condition, which makes Ambassador Aristine feel breathless. This clause is in view of the racial oppression committed by Greece against the Bulgarians in the region. Now, as the successor of the former Bulgarian kingdom, Romania and the United Kingdom of Bulgaria demand that Greece return the territory demarcated by the peace treaty of Neuilly, so that the people in the region will not continue to suffer from the Greek government of oppression. Point in a nutshell, Romania is now disappointed by Greece's oppression of Bulgarians in the region and demands that Greece return these territories. Moreover, this diplomatic note has a time limit, requiring Greece to reply within 72 hours. Looking at this photo, that looks like a declaration of war. The Greek ambassador Aristine has no other ideas at all, and now he just wants to send this news back to China as soon as possible. When the emergency telegram from Romania reached Athens, Metaxas, the prime minister of Greece and the dictator, immediately realized that the situation was not good. Disputes at this time, British Prime Minister Chamberlain and French Daladier were busy because of the Czech crisis. At this time, Chamberlain had not met Hitler by plane, but he had already exchanged views with the French Prime Minister and Daladier, that is, trying to prevent Britain and France from falling into a new war. Therefore, in the face of the sudden outbreak of the Greek crisis, the two countries are even more troubled. Because Romania is a newly rising power, its attitude towards it needs to be cautious. If Britain and France strongly support Greece, war may break out. Although this can be helped by Greece, Romania's strength is very considerable. The two countries have estimated that Romania, with its population of 48 million, the latest statistics in 1938, is enough to explode an army of 3 or 4 million, and Romania's military industry is good and can meet its own needs. It is a very difficult task for the British and French governments to get the army to fight against it. The difficulties mainly came from the people's dislike of war. The main reason was that World War I was too tragic. Among them, the British suffered 2.4 million casualties. Although there were colonial troops as cannon fodder, the main battles had to be undertaken by British soldiers. This is also the reason why the British used more colonial troops in World War II. In World War I, the local casualties were too heavy, so cannon fodder is better, and France is even worse. As the main target of the attack, the total number of casualties of French soldiers reached more than 5 million, and it took almost a generation to defeat Germany. Moreover, after the victory, the debts of the two countries were high, and the economy was sluggish, because of the aftermath of the war. Even in 1936, when the British Pacifist Organization conducted a poll, 90% of the people refused to join the war, and the idea of anti-war and seeking peace penetrated almost everyone. Of course, this also has a lot to do with the current economic downturn in Britain and France, and many social problems caused by the unemployed population. In addition, the attitude of the British and French governments to the economy above all else fully shows that neither the two governments are ready for war. All these reasons add up to the fear of war in Britain and France. Therefore, after receiving the request from Greece, Britain and France immediately sent a diplomatic note to Romania, requesting Romania to cancel the time limit for the note and not to take any military action until the negotiation was inconclusive. Although the British and French attitudes seem a little tough, the powerlessness they reveal has long been seen through by Edel. Romania's attitude of going to war with Greece before was equivalent to that I was going to burn the house down, which caused others to quickly dissuade me. At this time, you said not to burn the house, but I wanted to open a window. Although this is just a matter of attitude, there should also be a strong attitude. First of all, Romania has mobilized nearly 400,000 troops from 24 divisions to the border area. At the same time, the navy consists of 4 battleships, including the Vlad, which is undergoing sea trials, 2 aircraft carriers, 4 heavy cruisers, and a large number of light cruisers, and the large fleet composed of destroyers has passed through the Black Sea Strait mightily and is heading towards the Love Sea. In addition, Romania issued a call-up order announcing a nationwide call for 500,000 new recruits. It is worth mentioning that in this call-up order, the soldiers from the Bulgarians are the most. In this Greek crisis, The former Bulgarian territory has completed 230,000 of the 500,000 call-up orders, Romanians 21, Ukrainians 40,000, Hungarians 40,000. 10,000, and other ethnic groups around 10,000, worthy of being the country with the highest mobilization rate in World War I. It is precisely because of such a move by Romania. Let Britain and France think that Romania wants to do something to Greece, so they have to stop the Greek crisis first. Point as for how to solve the Greek crisis that broke out, it is easy to sit down and talk about it. Chapter 659 Chamberlain visits UO. Although Britain and France temporarily stopped the military threat of Romania, the move to station heavy troops on the border has not changed. And the Romanian fleet also appeared in the Mediterranean, but this time its propaganda was to go to Italy for military exchanges. Romania temporarily stopped military operations, although Britain and France breathed a sigh of relief. However, Greece is still worried, but compared with Romania's casual mobilization of 500,000 people, Greece can only mobilize 300,000 people by feeding hard, because the total population of Greece is less than 7 million. Moreover, whether the 300,000 people in Greece can even have guns is a problem, because the Greek reserves are simply not enough. According to the latest news from Romania, the current Greek stockpile of weapons and equipment can only be equipped with a maximum of 200,000 people. At present, Greece is purchasing weapons and equipment from abroad, but it is difficult to buy and obtain weapons, because many countries are afraid and Romania dare not extract them from their own reserves, so they can only produce them now. In addition, the current attitude of Britain and France is also interesting. Countries closely related to Britain and France have no interest in the Greek procurement contract inversion. It is said that Britain and France do not want to stimulate Romania too much now, thinking that Britain and France are delaying time for Greece to prepare for war. But no matter how they purchase weapons and equipment, the Greeks alone are no match for Romania at all. The disparity between professional and conscripts is there, and the military is now more demanding than WWI. Going to the battlefield without long training is a crime. So Romania is not panic at all and is still making its own preparation step by step. However, compared with Romania, Britain and France are busy. Now that the British and French envoys are all over Europe, they need to understand the attitudes of other countries and their views on the two crises. However, the main goals of Britain and France are still on the two countries involved, Germany and Romania. Only by negotiating with these two countries can the crisis affecting the peace in Europe be resolved. To this end, British Prime Minister Chamberlain did not hesitate to take a plane to talk with heads of countries. While airplanes are no longer the preserve of adventurers, flying in airplanes is now risky. As the Prime Minister, Chamberlain actually took the plane in a hurry. It seems that the Prime Minister is also fighting for the peace of Europe. Chamberlain first had a conversation with French Prime Minister Daladier, but no one knows the content of the conversation. Chamberlain then rushed to meet Hitler, and heard that Hitler didn't even go to the station to meet him. And now Chamberlain, who has just got off the plane, has come to Bucharest. The flight all the way made the 67-year-old old man with a trace of tiredness in his eyes in the face of the British Prime Minister's visit. Romanian Foreign Minister Costel greeted him at the scene. Welcome to Bucharest, Your Excellency. Hello, Mr. Costel. There were no flowers or a welcoming crowd, but Chamberlain didn't care about it. At least it was much better than when he was treated in Germany. Not only was Hitler not greeted in Germany at that time, but also no other high-ranking government officials received him. Your Excellency Prime Minister, we have prepared a place for you to stay. Facing Costa's words, Chamberlain hurriedly shook his head and said, No, I want to see His Majesty the King of your country now. Chamberlain is very clear about who will make the final call in Romania. This time I was in a hurry, not for a rest, otherwise it would be bad to take the train. At least it would give me a better rest. It was so frustrating to fly, and even now he still felt pain in his old bones. Your Excellency Prime Minister, I think it's better to take a rest. Your mental state is not very good at the moment. In the face of Costel's dissuasion, Chamberlain insisted on his own opinion. I'm fine now, and don't need a break. In the face of Chamberlain's insistence, Foreign Secretary Costa immediately took the Prime Minister to the car that had been waiting for him. On the way to the palace, no one talked in the car. Chamberlain was thinking about how he needed to convince the monarch to meet Edel next, while Kostel was for other reasons. After arriving at the palace, the lonely and sleepy journey finally came to an end. However, to Chamberlain's delight, Romanian Prime Minister Mihalike and Deputy Prime Minister Kirstev were waiting for him at the door. It seems that Romania has a better attitude than Germany. Perhaps the breakthrough is in Romania. Chamberlain, who had a flash of thought in his mind, got out of the car and smiled as he faced the two prime ministers who greeted him. Hello, Your Excellency Chamberlain. Hello, Your Excellency Mihalike and Kirstev. Thank you very much for the reception of the two prime ministers. After a brief mask, Chamberlain automatically stirred up the topic. I have always respected Romania very much. Your country has blocked the Red Threat in Eastern Europe and made outstanding contributions to world peace. This is enough to make all countries in the world appreciate your country's credit. However, your country suddenly asked Greece to return its territory. It is incomprehensible that the demands of China are enough to disrupt the peace situation in Europe. Facing Chamberlain's words, Kirstev replied coldly. It's not puzzling, because Greece oppressed the local Bulgarians, which is enough to show that the previous treaty was wrong. Since it was a mistake, it needs to be corrected, and now is the time to correct it. Compared with Deputy Prime Minister Kirstev's speech, Prime Minister Mihalike's attitude is much better. Okay, don't keep your majesty waiting. Although Prime Minister Mihalike stopped the conversation, Chamberlain still got the information he wanted. It appears that the influence of the Bulgarians in this coalition government is much higher than previously expected. After seeing Edel, Chamberlain discovered that there was no one else except Edel, not even the secretary. Hello, Your Majesty Edel. Hello, Your Excellency Chamberlain. After a brief greeting, Chamberlain spoke about his purpose. Your Majesty Edel, your country's actions in Greece are completely creating new turmoil in Europe. You must know that your country is also a beneficiary of the Versailles system. Such actions will surely bring other countries to follow suit, which will make Europe being caught in all kinds of disputes. You must know that there are ethnic minorities in every country. If such a big fight is made because of a little misunderstanding and injustice, then there will be no peace in Europe. Although Chamberlain said it very nicely, Edel was unmoved. Is the name of the British shitstick in vain? The UK has a lot of experience in dealing with this problem. I saw him shaking his head. Your Excellency Prime Minister, you are wrong. In this case of Greece and the Czech Republic, a small number of countries use the Versailles contract to target ethnic minorities with nationalism and fearlessness, and have achieved their purpose of diverting people's attention. Greece and the Czech Republic are among them. Representatives, we can't give these countries the illusion that the international community can't do anything about them, and we can't just say a few apologies and leave them alone. As the saying goes, if an apology works, then what do you need the police to do? Of course Edel's face was blushing when he said this, and neither the German Jews nor the Romanian Hungarians could speak, because no one spoke for them. In the face of Edel's speech, Chamberlain knew its intention, but he still had to fight for it. The United Kingdom does not want the Mediterranean to become more lively. There are already 3 forces in the Mediterranean, and no one wants to forcibly insert one. Your Majesty Edda, I can understand your country's mood, but neither our country nor France agrees with Greece's return of its territory. This will increase the tension in the Balkans, which will be detrimental to all countries. Facing Chamberlain's words, Edel picked up a document and handed it to Chamberlain. It is because of respect for Britain and France that I stopped the Romanian operation, but our patience is very limited. This is the mobilization order given to me by the military. I have not signed it, and I do not want to sign it. But if necessary, if so, I'll still sign it. Chamberlain listened to Edel's speech and looked at the Romanian mobilization order, which was the war mobilization prepared by the Romanian military. According to the decree, Romania will recruit men aged 18 to 35 years old, and its requirement is to recruit 1.2 million people at a time. Obviously this mobilization order was prepared for the intervention of Britain and France. Chamberlain looked at it and felt like the war was about to fall in front of him. Thinking of the previous discussions with French Prime Minister Daladier, the old man couldn't sit still, and he now urgently wants to renegotiate with France. Chapter 660 A different Munich conference. 1. Is the Prime Minister gone? Edel asked the foreign minister next to him. I took him on the plane early this morning and left by plane. In fact, if it wasn't getting late yesterday, Chamberlain would have wanted to fly away immediately. But after a night's rest, the British old man couldn't wait to leave by plane in the morning. As for the reason for leaving, Edel did not have to guess. He must have gone to discuss with French Prime Minister Daladier, but no matter how it is negotiated, Edel's attitude will not change. Romania needs the northern territory of Greece, which not only allows the government to add political points to the Bulgarians, but also the navy urgently needs the port of Thessaloniki. It is also the only Mediterranean port currently available to Romania. In order to gain the strategic advantage of freedom before the outbreak of the war, Edel is also determined to this port. However, although Edel thought so, he couldn't stand the fact that others could see it clearly. For example, the foreign minister beside him was worried about Romania taking this opportunity to have a bad relationship with Britain and France. Your Majesty, is it too tough to deal with the British mediation this time, seeing that Foreign Secretary Costello was so worried about the possible overreaction of Britain and France? Edel knew that this was not just his attitude, but represented a large number of people. Although Romania's strength is developing well at present, it is also a famous country in the world. However, the accumulated power from Britain and France for hundreds of years cannot be eliminated so easily. Even the national strength of the motherland in later generations is second only to the United States, but many people still think that Europe and Japan are strong. Of course, unlike later generations, now there is a most direct way to solve this problem. Victory would remove these people's fears of Britain and France, although this would require Edel's guidance. However, Edel can't answer the words of the foreign minister now. Costello, our country needs a port in the Mediterranean, and you should know the benefits of it. In the meeting with Chamberlain yesterday, I feel that Britain and France will make concessions to us, as long as our attitude is not loose. In addition, in the Thracian region of Greece, the Bulgarians are encouraged by the gathering of our troops on the front line, and large-scale demonstrations have broken out in cities such as Thessaloniki and Xanthi in the region. What Edel said was the credit of the intelligence department. After Edel served as the king of Bulgaria, Monkman, who was instructed, began to lay chess pieces in the area. At the same time funding political forces in the region. And now it's time to pay off, with tens of thousands of protesters marching in Xanthi alone, holding high the flags of the United Kingdom of Romania and Bulgaria, and chanting slogans for a turn. These people marched in front of the city hall. As for the larger scale of Thessaloniki, there are nearly 50,000 people. Like Xanthi, they all held the flag of the kingdom and shouted slogans in the face of these protests. The Greek government did not dare to suppress them. On the one hand, there is the pressure from the Romanian-Chembing border, and on the other hand, there are warnings from Britain and France. Because Britain and France warned Greece before that, asking it not to provoke Romania, otherwise Britain and France will stop the work of mediation. In the face of warnings from Britain and France, even Metaxas, the dictator, dared not ignore it. Therefore, the restraint of the Greek government has increased the momentum of demonstrations and protests, but these don't give Britain and France much consideration. It is clear that Foreign Secretary Costello believes that these protests cannot influence British and French decision-making. Facing the words of the foreign minister, Edel shook his head and replied, I know this is just a way for me to test the attitude of Britain and France, and my personal envoy should be in Italy. Edel's words surprised Costello, because His Majesty had never discussed this matter with him. This made him feel a little wary. Did his previous remarks make His Majesty feel uneasy about him? Don't worry, it's just a hope that Italy will support our private visit. Edel was right. It was indeed a private visit, but this time the private person talked about something else. Edel's personal envoy, Halsard, presented Mussolini with a gift. Mussolini in Rome was looking at the gift, a map of Albania. Edel intends to support the Italian occupation of Albania in exchange for Italian support for Romania. Edel's ambitions for the Balkans have always been very strong. Before the First World War, Italy actively intervened in the affairs of the Balkans, but due to the exclusion of Austria-Hungary and Russia in the region, when Italy had no chance to start. Shortly after the end of the First World War, Mussolini, who had only come to power at the time, used the killing of his general Enrico Tellini in Greece to provoke a dispute, and occupied the Greek island of Corfu. However, due to the intervention of the League of Nations and the poor strength of Italy, the final result was that Italy gave up the island with the indemnity of Greece. And now Edel put this opportunity in front of Mussolini. Glancing at the map, Mussolini raised his head and asked the envoy in front of him, "Mr. Holstead, do you mean that Romania fully supports our country's acquisition of Albania?" "Yes, Your Excellency Prime Minister, My Majesty Edel believes that the current Balkan Peninsula is too disorderly to have so many disputes, and my country hopes that its friend Italy will intervene here, which is also very beneficial to our country." In the face of such rhetoric, Mussolini smiled. "Isn't your country currently exerting influence in the Balkans? Why do you need our help, Your Excellency Prime Minister? The focus of our country has always been Ukraine, and the dispute with Greece is also due to the pressure from the former Bulgarian kingdom. You also know that a large number of Bulgarians are currently living in Macedonia and Thrace, and we must protect them." The words of the special envoy Holstead moved Mussolini. The two most important countries in Italy were choosing their own prey, and Italy should not sit idly by. Thinking of this, he stood up. The Greek government has always been made up of a group of thugs who have gone too far towards the country's Bulgarians. As a responsible power, Italy fully supports Romania's legitimate interests. Mussolini's words made Holstead relieved. This leader is really, as His Majesty said, loves petty gain. When Edel took over Italy, Germany also made new moves. At present, Hitler publicly declared that he would not hesitate to go to war with the Czech Republic for the sake of Sudetenland. And he not only said this, but also did it. A large-scale army is massing towards the German-Czech border, and he has also drawn up a green plan to invade the Czech Republic. With Germany's attitude of wanting to fight a war, Britain and France couldn't sit still. Coupled with the previous Romanian mobilization gesture, Britain and France, who felt that their country was about to be dragged into the war by these two small countries, urgently negotiated a result, that is to arrange the related countries to discuss together, and Germany and Romania also expressed their approval, so the decision about the countries to get together for talks came into being. As for the location, at Hitler's insistence, Munich would be the venue for the talks. So the heads of 5 countries consisting of Britain, France, Italy, Germany, and Romania will negotiate a European peace in the place where Hitler made his fortune. As for the Czech Republic and Greece, which caused the two crises, they are waiting outside for the results of the negotiations. At the same time, the Soviet Union, an important force in Europe, was completely ignored by Britain and France, which made Stalin, who was closely watching it, very upset. Well, now the whole world is watching Munich, and I hope the leaders of the participating countries will discuss a result. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 661, A Different Munich Conference, Part 2. September is a harvest season, and farmers who have worked for a year are harvesting their own fruits. And in Munich, the heads of the participating countries also rushed here to prepare to discuss the two major crises facing Europe. The 5 leaders who came to Munich were British Prime Minister Chamberlain, French Prime Minister Daladier, Italian Prime Minister Mussolini, Romanian Prime Minister Mihalik, and German Head of State Hitler. As for the representatives of the Czech Republic and Greece, they could only wait for the talks' result. As for why Edel didn't come, because he is the king of Romania, his status is not equal. And Edel thinks that it doesn't matter if he doesn't come to the meeting, because Romania's conditions will not change, no matter who comes. It needs to be discussed according to these conditions. Since it is a multinational summit meeting, Germany as the host will naturally not ignore all parties, so Hitler deliberately appeared in front of everyone with the heads of countries. And in order to show Germany's attitude, Hitler also took the heads of countries to review the army. Under the leadership of Hitler, the heads of the participating countries reviewed the German army. The painter was born in Hitler's pursuit of art, which is also reflected in the current German military uniforms. He once said, military uniforms must be handsomely designed to reflect the nobility and majesty of soldiers, so that young people will join the army without hesitation. And he not only said this, but also did it. With his talent for painting and unique aesthetics, Hitler personally participated in the design of German military uniforms. Rigorous style and exquisite tailoring make soldiers look very imposing in military uniforms. Many young people choose to join the army just to get a handsome uniform. In addition, clothes also depend on body shape. After Hitler came to power, he promoted national sports, held summer camps for young people, and encouraged various sports. While this kind of national fitness brings high quality soldiers, it also adds points to military uniforms. After all, military uniforms also depend on the figure, to reflect the masculine beauty and handsome side. I say here, that the breeches are ugly, no one beats me, not to mention, that the specially selected review troops are all over 1.85 meters in size, which makes the soldiers even more extraordinary. However, Hitler's intentions may not be of much use, although the heads of countries are politely reviewing this army. That makes Hitler proud, and they know from their frequent exchanges that no one cares too much about it. Chamberlain communicated with Daladier in a low voice from time to time, and Mussolini also clearly interacted with Mihalicke, which is obviously a reflection of the attitudes of various countries. In addition to reviewing the military, representatives of participating countries also briefly participated in a brief press conference. The speeches of leaders of various countries at the meeting were different. Among them, Britain and France said the most about peace. As for Darrow's words, what they said was their own demands. Of course, he did not forget to say a few words of peace, but it was just embellishment. Mussolini, on the other hand, was showing the importance of Italy in this meeting, talking about Italy's contribution to this meeting, and so on. It can be seen from the conversations of the heads of countries that their emphases are different. Britain and France wanted to avoid war, Darrow wanted to achieve their own goals, and Italy wanted to gain a sense of presence. With the end of the press conference, the heads of state are preparing to discuss the current crisis in the Palace of the State. In the small conference room of the Palace of the Heads, the talks finally began. At the beginning of the meeting, Hitler reiterated Germany's position. Our German demand is that the Sudetenland must be returned to our country. We do not accept the autonomy of the Sudetenland and other demands. The sovereignty of the Sudetenland must belong to our country. After Hitler's words fell, Mihalicke also reiterated Romania's attitude. Our Romanian attitude is the same. The territory assigned to Greece in the Neuilly Peace Treaty must be returned, and our country will not accept other methods. The tough stance of Germany and Romania did not surprise the two leaders of Britain and France. Because Britain and France have discussed privately how to deal with this crisis, neither country was willing to be involved in the war. Because of the Czech Republic and Greece, because many newspapers compared the Czech and Greek crisis with the Serbian crisis that broke out in World War I, which aroused many people's fear of the cruelty of World War I. No one wants to repeat the war that killed tens of millions of people and cost hundreds of billions of dollars in property damage. As the original parties, Britain and France are also unwilling to do it again. This is especially true of France. The last war lost a generation. If it loses another generation, France is not far from destroying the country. Therefore, the attitudes of Britain and France towards the Czech Republic and Greece have become very subtle. On the one hand, the two countries do not want to cause a war, and on the other hand, they are their own allies. The Czech Republic is an important ally of the French Small Entente bloc, and together with Poland and Yugoslavia, it forms a siege on the German flank. However, in the face of Germany's threat of war, France itself backed down. In fact, France's retreat has been revealed since the construction of the Maginot Line with great effort. Greece is an important part of the British in the Eastern Mediterranean, responsible for containing the energy of Italy and Turkey. In addition, after the merger of Romania and Bulgaria, there is an additional task to prevent Romania from extending its tentacles to the Mediterranean. But now, facing the dispute provoked by Romania, the United Kingdom obviously does not want to go out to help. So after Darrow tried out the attitudes of Britain and France, it was natural how to make Britain and France retreat, and all kinds of radical slogans were shouted loudly. Inexpensive. Although Britain and France intend to give up the protection of the Czech Republic and Greece, Britain and France do not intend to completely let Germany and Romania do as they wish. I saw Chamberlain and other leaders of Rhodes, and Rhodes finished speaking and said, For the sake of European peace, the Sudetenland requested by the head of state Germany, we can let the region organize a referendum, which can be completed under German supervision. At present, the result of the negotiation between Britain and France is to give up support for the Czech Republic and Greece, but Chamberlain intends to save a little face from another aspect. That is to let the crisis be resolved by means of a referendum, which can at least explain to the domestic people and the Czech Republic and Greece, although it is only a nominal explanation. Because the vote under the supervision of Germany is the best proof, and the result of the vote is bound to be very favorable to Germany. However, Hitler was obviously unwilling to give even this face, and after hearing what Chamberlain said, his face became a little unsightly. Your Excellency Prime Minister, this proposal is not fair to Germany. Germans in the region have lived here since ancient times, and they do not need to vote, because they are supposed to be citizens of Germany. It is obvious that Hitler is not willing to solve the Czech crisis by means of a referendum. Although this will allow Germany to gain the Sudetenland, he prefers to do it in the way that the German people most want to see. In the face of Hitler's tough attitude, Chamberlain and Daladier looked at each other and said, Your Excellency, this is the most beneficial to European peace, and it is also a good explanation for the world. And Chamberlain's words did not satisfy Hitler, only he said it angrily. Germany will not accept such conditions at this time, the Romanian Prime Minister Mihalake suddenly interjected. Our country also believes that this is not good for Germany and should follow the opinion of His Excellency Hitler. After Mihalake interjected, Mussolini, who had a sense of presence, also answered. We in Italy also believe that the Sudetenland should belong to Germany. In the face of Rose's support for Germany, Chamberlain and Daladier did not expect it. The two crises broke out at the same time in a short period of time. It is impossible to say that there is no connection between the two countries. However, Chamberlain still didn't want to give up. He said, it's a deliberate outcome, and at least one that's acceptable to all. In the face of Chamberlain's words, Hitler immediately retorted. But our country does not accept such a result, and our country is the victim this time. Germany cannot accept a referendum, and the Soviet Union must be directly ceded to our country. In fact, the debate on whether to refer to a referendum or a direct division, both results are the same. The main difference is whether Britain and France will take the lead, or whether Germany will take the initiative in this crisis. It was clear that Hitler did not intend to give up the initiative, and both Romania and Italy clearly supported Germany. The UK and France still had obvious expectations for this, and I saw Chamberlain skip the Czech issue and continue to talk to Mihalake. Prime Minister Mihalake, your country requires Greece to return the Bulgarian territory occupied by the Peace Treaty. We think it is best to organize a referendum, but Romania can be responsible for supervising the referendum. Chapter 662 A Different Munich Conference, Part 2. If it is a separate meeting, Mihalake has already agreed, which is an undesired result for Romania. But now, German feelings must be taken into account, and Hitler sneered when he heard the British proposal. Of course Mihalake, who was not looking sideways, didn't see it. He said directly, our country and Germany's request must be directly assigned to our country, and the referendum and other proposals will not be accepted. Facing the stubborn attitude of the two countries, Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister, exchanged a few words with French Prime Minister Daladier in a low voice, and said, since no results have been reached so far, let's move on to the next issue. Clearly Chamberlain didn't intend to dwell too much on this issue, and jumped straight to the next one. This will be French Prime Minister Daladier speaking. Although we have not yet reached a major solution to the crisis, we have one requirement. That is, Germany must ensure that it will not continue to make any other territorial claims to the Czech Republic, and it will not continue to make the same claims to other countries. As for Romania, the same is true, except for the territorial disputes assigned to Greece in the Neuilly Peace Treaty. Romania shall not continue to make any other territorial claims to Greece. In addition, Romania shall also not make any territorial claims to Yugoslavia for any reason. Turkey, Hungary and the Czech Republic make any territorial claims under any pretext. Obviously, Prime Minister Daladier's words mean that Britain and France will not continue to tolerate more demands from Germany and Romania, and it is also a final warning to Germany and Romania. Britain and France worry that Germany will continue to dismember the Czech Republic and gain access to the country's military industry. As for Romania, Britain and France are more worried. Among them, they are most worried about the former Bulgarian territory occupied by Yugoslavia. They are afraid that, after obtaining satisfaction from Greece, Romania will put Yugoslavia as its next target. Another concern for them is that Romania has a move against Istanbul. The jewel of Eastern Thrace, which locked the Romanian navy in the Black Sea. This restriction was loosened after Romania gained territory from pre-World War I Bulgaria. But as long as Istanbul is not in Romanian hands, its navy will inevitably be divided. After all, Turkey is also a sovereign country, and the Romanian navy must report if it wants to pass. This will increase the time for its deployment, and it is also very important for the United Kingdom and France. Because Romania and Italy have very close relations, Britain and France are also afraid that the two countries will jointly challenge it. Prime Minister Daladier's words were very obvious, and Hitler and Maharakay, the two parties involved, both agreed with him. After thinking about it. There is no problem. Our country does not want to intensify tensions in Europe other than its demands for Sudete. Our country is the same. In addition to the fact that Greece oppresses the local Bulgarians too much to see, it will not make any territorial claims against other countries. The answers of the two made Britain and France feel a lot better. After all, no one wanted to see Europe continue to turmoil. Although these guarantees will be translated into words and preserved, it is unknown how much they will be used, but at least it will give Britain and France time. Britain and France, which had bought time, had better disrupt the relationship between Germany and Romania, except as a precautionary measure of war. Both Britain and France feel threatened by the two countries getting too close, and must find a way to disrupt them. However, this does not belong to the content of the talks, it is just the preliminary thoughts of Chamberlain and Daladier. Since both Germany and Romania have agreed not to make any other demands, Britain and France, which have been initially satisfied, will not place too much importance on dominance. So then on the question of whether the referendum is a direct merger, the two countries won the victory. However, there was also a small episode. French Prime Minister Daladier hoped that Germany and Romania would give some compensation on the grounds that Sudetenland and Thrace still had a large amount of state-owned assets, but the two countries refused on the spot. The reasons are already made. It is not bad that the Greek and Czech governments did not compensate them for their oppression. Still want compensation. Don't even think about it, as the relevant conditions were negotiated one by one. It was already early morning. In this brightly lit Führer's palace, Hitler, who was already exhausted but excited, stood up. Prime Minister Mihalike, Prime Minister Mussolini, do you want to leave everything? Alright. At Hitler's invitation, the two prime ministers did not have much hesitation at all, and they followed Hitler and went out. I didn't see the worry flashing in the eyes of Chamberlain and Daladier, but both of them knew it was important. After Hitler and others left, the Czech and Greek representatives were called in. This is the best result we have negotiated for you. You can sign it when you see it. When handing over the negotiated conditions to the two countries, Chamberlain made a weary sentence. The Czech and Greek envoys looked at each other, and both saw worry in each other's eyes, but now they can only see it first. The two looked at the results of their respective negotiations, and within a minute, two exclamations came from their mouths. It's impossible. How could this be the result? This result is simply unacceptable. Seeing the two envoys yelling, Chamberlain looked at them coldly. How impossible? This is the best result we can negotiate. Do you want to trigger a war in Europe? If you can't cure Dro, you can't cure both of you. In the face of Chamberlain's scolding, the Greek envoy said quickly, I'm not doubting your country's sincerity in helping Greece, but if this clause is signed, it will trigger domestic riots. The people of our country have always regarded the Thrace region as a country. If it is signed like this, we can't explain it. The Czech envoy also hurriedly said, the same is true in our country. If the Sudete area is lost, The people will be enough to overthrow the government. Point. The words of the special envoys did not cause any mood swings among the leaders of Britain and France, only to see French Prime Minister Daladier say coldly, "This is also the attitude of our two countries. You'd better think about it clearly." Point. Facing the threats from Britain and France, the Czech and Greek envoys were discouraged. Without the support of Britain and France, the two countries are simply powerless to stop Dero's move. Point. Eventually the two were forced to sign the contract. Point. So far, the Sudeten crisis and the Thracian crisis caused by Dero were finally calmed down by satisfying the demands of the two great powers. Chamberlain, who returned to London that day, waved a piece of paper signed by Hitler and said the famous words to those government officials and celebrities who welcomed him, "My good friend, this is our time. Peace." French Prime Minister Daladier said the same thing in Paris. Now that peace has come to Europe, Stalin may have disagreed, but no one cares about his feelings. But perhaps the value of the Soviet-French Mutual Aid Treaty may need to be reconsidered. Chapter 663 Thessaloniki 1. The morning sun shone on the courtyard, and it also shone on Monbeklev. He just took a shower and put on his best clothes, and his whole person was full of joy. Point. The warm Mediterranean wind blowing on my face is really addicting, much better than my hometown. Monbeklev remembered that his hometown in Sliven was very cold. The cold wind from the Arctic blew all the way to the Romanian plains and was blocked by the Bulgarian mountains. And Sliver is unfortunately just north of the mountains, so winter often encounters freezing temperatures of -10 degrees. As a child, Monbeklev wrapped up like a little bear in winter and played naughty with the children. Point. Such days waited until Monbeklev was 5 years old, when the Monbeklev family was mobilized to Thessaloniki. The warm environment of the Mediterranean conquered his heart at once. The only downside is that there are a lot of mosquitoes. However, with the defeat of Bulgaria, the Treaty of Neuilly assigned this best port in Bulgaria to Greece, and the miserable days of Monbeklev, who was only 9 years old, came. His father died in this damn war, and he was completely raised by his mother. However, after years of hard work, her mother died of a serious illness when she was an adult in Monbeklev. Of course, there was also the oppression of the original Bulgarians by the Greeks, but now Monbeklev is not worried about the future. Now he is full of confidence, because he became a citizen of the kingdom, although it is now called the United Kingdom. In Monbeklev it is the Kingdom of Bulgaria. Point. Thinking of this, he couldn't sit still, picked up a piece of brown bread, and knocked on the door. Next door. Lurks, you're ready to go. Why are you still dawdling? Point. Okay munch, I'll be fine. Point. As the words fell, a young man with flaxen hair walked out with a piece of bread in his mouth. Point. Glancing at his clothes, Monbeklev said with a frown, "Why don't you change into better clothes? This is to welcome the army into the city. The girls won't give you a second look then. Point. Get used to it. Get used to it." Point. Velux, who was lectured by Monbeklev, glanced at the clothes on his body that were indeed inappropriate and swooped back. A few minutes later, Velux, who had changed drastically, stood proudly in front of Monbeklev, dressed like a groom. Point. That's it. Point. Although it still feels a little incongruous, it looks much more pleasing to the eye. Point. Let's go, or we'll miss the car. The two of them walked quickly towards the place where they took the car. The car is coming. Hurry up. Point. Why so many people? Point. Squeeze it up first, or it will be too late. Point. The two of them squeezed into a bus that looked like a can of sardines, and found a slightly wider place to stay. Point. Glancing at his wrinkled clothes, Velix couldn't help but say, "This car doesn't usually have so many cars. Maybe they all think the same way as we do." Point. Because of the sultry heat and the distribution of various smells, the two of them didn't want to talk much. Point. The two followed the car all the way to the city. When they were about to arrive at their destination, they saw a large number of people dressed in costumes from time to time on the street, as if it was going to be a festival. Point. This made the two people who were squeezed in the car feel a lot more comfortable. After finally arriving at Eamon Street, the two who got off the car felt that they were in a sea of joy, and there were people singing and dancing everywhere, as if the whole of Thessaloniki came here. Point. Look, munch, that girl in yellow over there. Point. In the direction of Velux's fingers, Monbeklev saw a girl in bright yellow who was chatting with her companions. The smile on his face was indeed fascinating, and he found that more than two people were watching the girl, and many people around were caught in it. Point. Okay, Velux, we are here to welcome the army into the city this time. Don't forget point, it was obvious that Mondeklev's words had no effect, and Velux was fascinated. If only I could marry her as my wife. Point, wake up, Velux, it's time for us to go. Point, after Mondeklev finished speaking, he continued to walk forward without waiting for Velux to speak. After so many years of working at the wharf, Velux, who was a small trader, was not an opponent, and was quickly pulled away. Point, stop, my shoe is off. Hey Munch, my shoe is off. These are new shoes I just bought. Point, Velux, who had only one shoe on his feet, looked at Mondeklev with a sullen expression, both wanting to laugh and feeling guilty. Point, I thought you were lying to me, so I didn't care so much. Point, Mondeklev looked at his friend's angry expression and didn't know why he suddenly wanted to laugh. Point, ha 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 ha. Point, Monk. Point, okay, I won't laugh. I promise not to laugh. Ha 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 ha. Point, the two, who were almost friends, finally reached a consensus when Velux was wearing shoes and Mondeklev was barefoot. Point, seeing that the time was almost up, the two quickly chose a good position and looked forward to it. And people with the same thoughts as they are standing on the street, they are all waiting. Point, without letting them wait any longer, in a roar, the mighty and majestic Romanian army appeared in front of everyone in neat steps. The military band was at the head, playing the military music and walking at the front, followed by soldiers in neat military uniforms. They walked in neat steps, their heads held high, and they passed by without looking sideways. In the cheers of everyone, the strong masculinity of these tall and mighty soldiers immediately detonated the atmosphere, and the scene was full of cheers. The ribbons of flowers were scattered in the air, making the people present a cheer uncontrollably. Point, both of them were infected by this atmosphere, and the passionate ones also cheered with everyone. Point, Mondeklev looked at the troops passing by and exclaimed passionately, this is our army. Point, yeah, this is our army, and no one can bully us anymore. Point, with the passage of the infantry of the brigade, equipment such as tanks, artillery and armored vehicles appeared immediately. These heavy equipment lined up into rows, driving mighty across the street, and the soldiers in the car waved to the cheers of the crowd. Point, this naturally got a warm response, and many daring girls made air kiss gestures, which made the scene more lively. Point, and this scene made a thought flash in the minds of many young and energetic young people. I want to join the army. Point, I want to join the army. Point, Mondeklev looked at the army in front of him and couldn't help but speak his mind. Point, listening to his friend's sudden decision, Velix couldn't help but ask, Monk, have you really made up your mind? Yes, I've decided. Point, then I wish you the best of luck, Monk. Point, how about you? Of course, I still have a stall on Venice Street. I can buy a shop there in the future. I will definitely go back to buy a shop there. Point, in this lively welcome, the two young people each imagined the future. Chapter 664, Thessaloniki, Part 2. The lively entrance ceremony made the local Bulgarians into a carnival, and at the same time, it also made the Greeks who oppressed them on weekdays fear that they would be retaliated and go back to Greece. Point, of course, this phenomenon is also happening all over the former Bulgarian territory. With the occupation of the Romanian army, or Bulgarian army, the Greek government agencies in the region are ready to withdraw. Once Romania took over, they fled back to Greece like their butts were on fire. Point, however, when the carnival finally ended, the local Bulgarians returned to their normal lives. A large group of Dutch naval officers came to the port area. They observed the entire port and kept discussing the best plan. Point, for the navy, the biggest gain in receiving territory this time is the excellent port of Thessaloniki. Although the port is only 13 meters deep, it is sufficient for the current navy. The deepest draft is the Vlad-class 4-ship 10.21 meters. Moreover, as Romania's only good port in the Mediterranean Sea, the navy rushed over shortly after receiving the city. Point, here we plan to build a main battery, install a 380mm main gun that can rotate 360 degrees, and have a range of up to 42 kilometers, which is enough to block the entire area to protect the safety of the port. Point, at Cape Calamaria, Admiral Nestor Koo, the commander of the fleet, listened to Colonel Dobbert, the chief naval architect of the navy, while inspecting the place himself. Point, good. Point, taking a look at the drawings, Admiral Nestor Koo already knew that the entrance to the sea between Cape Calamaria and the opposite Vardar River is only 37 kilometers away from Pradi, and the construction of a fort here is enough to block any thoughts of the enemy wanting to advance. Point, Colonel Dobbert continued to point to the large hills behind. We plan to build several forts here to prevent enemy raids from behind, to seize the fort point regarding the construction of fortifications behind the battery. It is a basic operation, and every naval base in the world has such facilities. Because the vast majority of naval bases were seized from land attacks, the real attack from the sea is basically as rare as a rarity, so all countries attach great importance to the defense of the land point according to the design. We will set up 26 anti-aircraft positions around the port, equipped with 389 large, medium and small anti-aircraft guns and 495 anti-aircraft machine guns. This far exceeds the air defense of other countries' naval bases, indicating that Romania attaches great importance to airstrikes. Because Haju has done many exercises before and found it, attacks from the air are more difficult to defend against than from the sea, as there are no geographical restrictions at all, and attacks can come from all directions also, because the newly built naval base in Thessaloniki is too important to face threats from other countries in the Mediterranean. Its attention is also at the same level as the most important naval port of Varna Point. This is also the reason why Admiral Nestacu, who is the commander of the fleet, needs to come and ask in person. And the completion of the naval port will become Romania's most important base in the Mediterranean point. Of course, the air defense of the port cannot rely solely on these ground air defense facilities. A newly established naval road-based flying wing, 184 aircraft, is responsible for protecting the security of the port and its surroundings. Admiral Nestacu, who completed the inspection at Cape Calamaria, continue to inspect the future planned naval warehouses, oil storage, headquarters, airports and other facilities. These are the newly established municipal government, the first time for the Navy, to approve the land point. As for why the city government attaches great importance to the construction of the naval base, not only because of the order from Bucharest, but also because the construction of the base requires a lot of labor, which can contribute to the city government's economic boost. Moreover, after the base is completed, there will be more than 10,000 permanent naval personnel, and these people also need to spend in Thessaloniki, which is not a small amount for the city government. Point in general, Nestacu, who has inspected almost the same, is satisfied. Point. But what should be said is still to be said, so I finally said it to the officer who was accompanying the construction. The construction time is very tight this time. It's only less than a year. You need to pay more attention. Point. Please rest assured, we have negotiated with the city government. They will recruit 20,000 laborers for us to be responsible for the construction of various facilities. Of course, we are mainly responsible for the command point for such a large project. The time required is so tight. Nestacu also knows that basically don't expect to keep secret work, but he still said something. I don't ask anything vague about the confidentiality of this construction work, but I must be prepared for someone to destroy it. Point. Please rest assured, Commander. The intelligence and military police departments attach great importance to this. In addition, our Navy's internal self-examination has been carried out, and the base information will not be disclosed to others. Then you have a heart. Point. Nestacu thought for a while and continued. By the way, I want to organize a dinner party tomorrow. Just invite government officials and local celebrities, and also the generals of the army, so as not to say that we are too stingy. Point. As ordered, Commander. In the face of Nestacu's request to organize a dinner, other admirals could not agree. Of course they agreed. Besides, the military and the government also need close cooperation, and the same is true for the army. Although the Romanian Navy does not have a favorable impression of the army, it does not have such a situation of old and dead. Point. After a while, a list of invitations appeared in front of Nestacu. In addition to the names of the government and celebrities, on the army name, the column of the 39th Division commander was written as Major General Misic, and glanced at Nestacu, who had no objection to this, and handed the list back to the officer. Just follow this list to invite. Point. Misic stretched his waist and then called out his orderly. Point. Feeler, are there still so many people coming to the barracks today to ask for enlistment? Yes, Your Excellency. Point. Hearing the orderly answer, Misic raised his head and smiled. For recruiting locals into the army, they have no right to do so, and can only wait for news from Bucharest. However, based on his years of experience, it is estimated that in a week at most, the order to allow the locals to join the army will arrive. But that doesn't matter to him. The 3-month training period for recruits To be recruited is unstoppable. He immediately handed over a document he signed. Give this order to Captain Rarks. Yes, Your Excellency. After the orderly left, Mizik picked up the phone. Pick up Commander Vinikov for me. Senior Vinikov, I'm Mizik. I'm looking for you this time to discuss the exercise between our two divisions. I think the same way. Our two divisions are both newly formed divisions. The exercise by our two divisions can better stimulate the soldiers' competitive psychology, which is beneficial to both divisions. Yes, I will cooperate with you. These are all small issues. By the way, there is also the matter of the Navy's Vice Admiral Midrafil hosting a banquet to invite us. No problem. Let's go together then. Chapter 665 Uranium Mine. Rodia wiped the sweat from his forehead and cursed in a low voice. Damn it, it's so hot in here. It's not at all comfortable in Paris. I didn't know why I should buy this damn uranium mine. What good is it for me to come and see it for myself? I'm afraid I'm crazy. The Congolese mining company staff completely pretended not to see the complaints of the Honorable Mr. Rodia. The weather in Congo is like this. Just get used to it. But the hot weather and various diseases are still a challenge for Europeans living in Congo. And this Honorable Mr. Rodia complained that the escorts of the Congolese mining company had long since seen it strange, and they had seen such a situation a lot. And privately they were betting on Mr. Rodia, how long this rich man from Paris could stay in the Congo. At present, the most pressing is half a month. Many people think that Mr. Rodia can only stay for half a month, and he will definitely not be able to stand here and return to Paris. Mon Dieu, give me ice water. I'm dying of heat. Just listen to this. Mr. Rodia screaming, calling his own servant. Coming. I saw a young man sweating profusely, rushing towards the Mr. Rodia, holding a glass of smoky ice water in his hand. This made the accompanying people from the Congo Mining Company see and scold. A big dog who can drink ice water at any time, and even the general manager of the company, Mr. Dirk, does not have the treatment. He deserves to be the rich young man who can buy the Zingaraboe mining area for $6 million. The Zingaraboe mining area mainly produces pitch uranium. This product has similar chemical properties to radium and has little industrial use. It is mainly used for the luminous coating of watches and the production of ceramics. In addition, it is part of the procurement of uranium research laboratories in various countries, but the amount is not large. Moreover, the pitch uranium here supplies 80% of the world's uranium users, but this has a lot to do with the fact that this unfamiliar element has little value. Fortunately, there are still some industrial uses here, otherwise it is only purchased by those research institutes bankrupt already. This is also the reason that the Congolese mining company sold the mining area at the right price after getting someone willing to buy it, and they are waiting for the Master Rodia to pay the final payment after the uranium mine has been inspected. If not, they would not be running around with this young master from Paris. Even if they are used to the Congolese heat, it is at least much cooler to stay in the company. They had been at Elisabeth Valeva since they had received this Monsieur Rodia, because the young master had been wandering around here. I'm going to see the living conditions of black people in a while, and these black people are terrified and shivered. Who is not afraid? Dozens of ferocious armed men occupy the entire small village. If the proper slave hunting team was launched decades earlier, then Mr. Rodia looked over here with relish, and when he saw the skinny child, he gave a few francs to express his condolences. For a while, I wanted to hunt elephants, and I went hunting with dozens of armed forces. This nondescript Mr. Rodia makes many people worry about the future of this pitch blende mine. Just don't know how much his family has for him to squander. After drinking a glass of ice water to cool off the heat, this Mr. Rodia finally said something that made everyone excited. Mon Pierre, tell them, today we are going to the mining area, and I want to see the mine I bought. Finally, when this man said such words, the employees of the Congolese mining company immediately prepared. Along the way, Mr. Rodia finally did not have any more moths. It may be that the Parisian master did not have the energy to toss the distance of 70 kilometers they drove all the way for 3 hours. mainly because the road conditions were not good and the driving speed was not fast. When he came to the mining area, the Mr. Rodier got out of the car. It smells so bad in here. Holding a handkerchief and covering his nose, Rodier complained to the people in the mining company beside him with an unhappy expression. Of course the asphalt smells bad and few people want to stay here any longer. But the smell of money can make many people ignore this smell. The accompanying mining company personnel introduced him to a strong man with a face full of flesh. This Nalco is currently in charge of managing the production of the asphalt mine. I saw this strong man bowing his head and bowing his face to please. Hello, Mr. Rodier. It seems that the quality of life of the workers in the mine is worrying, but this has no effect on Rodier. I saw him reach out and shake hands with the production manager and say something likely, "Hello, Mr. Nalco. Nalco, please introduce the basic situation of the mining area." When it comes to the situation of the mining area, the person in charge, Kid Cow, introduced it energetically. There are a total of 571 people working in the mining area, including 412 laborers, 14 managers, and 45 guards. Currently, about 1,000 tons of asphalt ore can be produced every year. Clearly the guards are on the high side, but that's as it should be when you think of it in Africa. Although Africa has abolished the slave trade for decades, its treatment can be much better than before. But these are obviously not in Nalco's consideration. These pigs are lazy, and only the whip can teach them the importance of hard work. This is the truth that European colonists have always believed in. However, his words obviously didn't attract much attention to Rodier, and he said, while covering his nose, "Well done. I plan to add some equipment to this mine in the future to better produce pitch uranium. But before here, I will appoint Monbier as the person in charge, but he is mainly responsible for other work, and production needs your excellency." What a lot of trouble. Rodier's words made Nalco ecstatic. Originally, this bitumen mine was not taken seriously, and if he, the production manager, returned to the Congolese mining industry, he would most likely be arranged to attack others. It's better to manage a mining area by himself. If nothing else, he can scrape a lot of oil and water from these pigs, and he can also generate income by himself with guards. His income is nearly 10 times his salary. So for him, going back to the mining company was the worst option. It is the best choice to continue to follow the new boss as the person in charge of the mining area. It is no wonder that he is so flattering to Rodier. As for Mr. Rodier, after staying in the mining area for half a day, he left by car and the remaining Monbier told him with a friendly smile, "Hello, I'm Monbier. Please take care of me in the future." Hello, I'm Monbier. We will work together from now on. Although this person was arranged by the new boss, it seemed that he was from a servant background and was easy to deal with. As long as the money is sufficient, no one will refuse to make a fortune together. Chapter 666 Accident. Oppenheimer was extremely tired after a day's troubles. He just walked out of the theoretical physics center named after himself, and everything seemed so beautiful. It would be better if the lovely Jenny was by her side. Walking through the University of California, Berkeley, Oppenheimer looked at the starry night sky with a pipe in his mouth. For Oppenheimer, its age is not young at all. Born in 1904, he is now 35 years old, but he has been studying and teaching until now. Since he met Jenny in 1936, the famous American physicist has been chasing her wildly, and he has made a lot of jokes in it, but for Oppenheimer he doesn't care at all, because he feels found a love. But unfortunately, Jane Tetlock did not respond to his pursuit, which made him feel sad. But although Jenny did not agree to his pursuit, Oppenheimer still thinks of her from time to time, especially when he is free. After walking down the road to the parking lot and picking up his car, Oppenheimer drove home. But he didn't notice that a black car followed him far behind him. When Oppenheimer passed a remote intersection and was waiting for a red light, the car rushed out and hit the back of his car. Oppenheimer, who was hit, got out of the car. The headlights of the car that caused the accident made him unable to open his eyes. "How did you drive? Didn't you see a red light?" Anyone who was hit by a car would be unhappy, and Oppenheimer was no exception. And a man got out of the car that caused the accident, glanced at the situation of the car that was hit, and apologized again and again. Sorry, I didn't notice there was a car in front of me, and I'm sorry for hitting your car. I'm Ralph. This is our business card, and I'll accompany you with all the damage. Oppenheimer smelled a strong odor of alcohol from the other party's mouth, and it seemed that he was a drinker. However, Oppenheimer, who was from a wealthy family, waved his hand for the request of the man named Ralph to compensate him. No, I'll just go back and fix it myself. After speaking, Oppenheimer planned to return to the car. How can this be? This is the loss I caused, and I must be responsible for it. The man named Ralph hurried forward and reached out to hand him a business card. Oppenheimer felt a little sorry for not picking it up, so he reached out to pick it up. Unexpectedly, the other party suddenly grabbed him. At this time, the man named Ralph was still half drunk. He was about to scream for help when a handkerchief with a pungent smell suddenly covered him. Snout. This is Heather. This was Oppenheimer's last thought. After fascinated by Oppenheimer, the man put him back in the passenger seat in his own car, while he drove away in the driver's seat. As for the car behind it, the same goes with it. It turned out that there were two people in the car. In order to prevent Oppenheimer from being defensive, only one person came out to negotiate. After the vehicle came to a cliff, the two put it on the main driver, and at the same time, took out a bottle of spirits and poured it heavily. After all this is done, start the car. I saw that the car carrying Oppenheimer slowly drove forward along the eyes of the two, and then fell off the cliff. After finishing all this, the two of them drove away silently. The next day, major American media published news of the death of the famous physicist Oppenheimer in a car accident. Edel in Romania was known earlier than the American media. I can't believe that this Mr. Oppenheimer passed away at such a young age. At the Institute of Nuclear Physics, Edel expressed his views on this matter to Einstein, Edward Taylor, Schrödinger, Fermi and others who were present. As for Fermi's arrival, that's another story. It's just that Fermi can't stand Edel's anti-Semitic policy. His wife is Jewish and wants to leave. The warm invitation of Romania, coupled with the promotion of the Jewish organization behind it, finally made Fermi choose to come to Romania. And Edel is of course happy to build the gathering of many physicists, and with their impetus, Romania's first atomic reactor has been built. So Edel came here this time not only to see the reactor, but also to cheer up these scientists. But Edel's tour will be the same, and he can't do anything other than express a word of thanks to the people in the laboratory. Moreover, listening to the various data of the nuclear reactor introduced by Ploiesti was like listening to a book from heaven, and it was still a book from heaven that I couldn't understand at all. This also fully exposed the fact that Edel was not well educated in his previous life. Just kidding. After the tour was over, Edel called Ploiesti to his side alone. It took a lot of time to complete the whole thing. Ploiesti, the only one who knew the whole plan, said after thinking it over and over again, it will take 7 to 9 years, and this is still the case, when the funds are sufficient and everything is going well. Edel felt agitated after hearing Ploiesti's words, but he didn't show it. Instead he smiled and encouraged. I'm very satisfied that the research and development can be completed at this time. Let's do it boldly. After leaving the Institute of Nuclear Physics, Edel's face sank. In order to make the Romanian nuclear research go smoothly, I have done so many things and this is the result. That's right. The pitch blende in Congo was indeed bought by Edel, but this is not the uranium mine that Romania wants to use here. At present sandstone type uranium ore is found in Transylvania, and there is also sandstone type uranium ore in Sliven, the former Bulgarian territory, so Romanian uranium needs do not need to be imported from outside. And this is because countries in the world do not pay enough attention to uranium, and they have little insight into the development of uranium mines. Therefore, when countries want to conduct nuclear research, then Congo's Zingirobwe pitch uranium will become the first choice. At present, Edel is most worried about the United States, whose national strength makes Edel alarmed. In order to delay the pace of the United States, it is an inevitable choice to win this uranium mine first. Although the United States can mine from the country at that time, it will take time, at least 6 months of preparation, to mine uranium ore. And at that time, as long as there is a little accident, it is very normal for the production of uranium mines to be intermittent. It really can't afford to delay, and it can delay time if it blows up. Not to mention how many Jewish physicists Romania has cut off. It's just that Edel's efforts still make Romania need 7 to 9 years. It seems impossible to complete the research on nuclear bombs before 1946. Since Romania cannot speed up, then other countries cannot speed up. Thinking of this, Edel instructed the guard, "Let Harl Monkman come to the palace immediately. I have something to look for him." Looking at His Majesty's gloomy expression, the guard quickly replied, "Yes, Your Majesty." In the following months, several well-known physicists, including John von Neumann, suffered accidents in the United States. And this caused a huge sensation in the United States, and all the data investigations on this matter have no clue. And Edel, who was far away in Romania, only said a word to Harl Monkman. Therefore, there must be no flaws in the destruction of the data. Chapter 667 Penicillin. While Edel was using all the tools for Romanian nuclear research, another significant research experiment was also being carried out in Focșani. Tulbov hurried to the institute with a white coat in his hand and a piece of bread in his mouth. The time on his watch had reached 8:07. "I hope the professor doesn't come, or I'll be dead." Tulbov, who was madly twisting in his heart, ran all the way. If it wasn't for his girlfriend last night, he wouldn't be up so late today. But whoever made him hadn't seen his girlfriend for almost a month. He couldn't hold back his youthful spirit. But the professor wouldn't listen to himself. He hated being late. If you are found out, being scolded is not bad, but if you get stuck on your graduation thesis, it will be really uncomfortable. Hurry up. And finally came to the laboratory and did not find the figure of the professor, which is really good news. Tove, you're late today. However, although the professor did not come, someone from the institute had already come. Overslept. Brother Neil, you won't tell the professor the person who came was my senior brother, Neil's senior brother, who had graduated and was studying for graduate school. And Tulbov has a good relationship with this senior brother, so he hopes that this senior brother can cover for him. And the senior said jokingly, "Just say what you did last night and I'll let you go." Tulbov thought about it and told the truth. "My girlfriend is here." I saw Neil blow a whistle. "Oh, yes, I'll let you go for the sake of your honesty. Besides, I see you and your girlfriend having dinner at the latest, and I have a good eye." Tulbov took out the key and opened the door of the storage room while asking his brother, "What is brother Neil going to take this time? Take a petri dish from 2 months ago for a search." "How many?" "Give me a New Zealand potato and a Siberian tomato." "Please wait a moment, I'll bring it to you tomorrow night." Tulbov immediately turned around and opened a door. This was the cultivation room, where penicillin was cultivated at a constant temperature. And there are racks lined up in the cultivation room, with signs standing on the racks, and soils from all continents are available here. Because their Professor Bolvin research found that penicillin was cultivated in different amounts in different soils, and it can reach up to 40 units per cubic centimeter, which is a remarkable improvement. At present, Fleming, who discovered and studied penicillin, also cultivated 2 units of penicillin per cubic centimeter. However, this is still a long way from industrialization. This needs to be explained. Tulbov's job is to be responsible for the temperature of the incubation room and to record the data. As for the research on penicillin, it is completely out of hand. New Zealanders here. Potatoes. Potatoes. Here. Tulbov, speaking to himself, took one from a row of petri dishes, where potatoes were found on a shelf marked New Zealand. Siberia. Siberia, this way. Tulbov took a petri dish of Siberian tomatoes, and found a petri dish in the corner of the shelf. The hyphae inside appeared to be unusually numerous. This made him unable to resist reaching for it. Of course he knew about penicillin. The penicillin in this petri dish was completely incomparable to other petri dishes. This makes Tulbov extremely happy. At least the professor can let him graduate smoothly. Thinking of this, Tulbov immediately took it out and walked out of the cultivation room with 3 petri dishes without waiting for Senior Neil to speak. Tulbov immediately shouted to Senior Brother with this unusually conspicuous petri dish, "Look, the penicillin in this petri dish is completely different from other petri dishes." Neil had discovered an unusually conspicuous petri dish long ago. He had been dealing with penicillin for many years and initially estimated that it contained at least hundreds of units of penicillin per cubic centimeter. However, this is only his own estimation, and the specific information will only be known after further inspection. However, to continue to study this cup of penicillin, at least wait for the professor to do it in person. It's not that Neil can't study, but the respect for the team leader. So I saw, Neil said excitedly. I'll call the professor right now. He must be crazy. After speaking, Neil thought of something and continued to talk to Tolboff. You prepare the operation records of the past few months. I believe you will be able to use them later there. That Petri dish is their point. Without letting them wait any longer, Professor Baldwin rushed into the laboratory. Here, Professor, see if there is more penicillin than in all our Petri dishes before. And it's still several times larger. Neil raised the Petri dish like a treasure, which made Professor Baldwin feel a little thrilled. Put it down and wait for me. Obviously, Professor Baldwin was more concerned about the safety of this Petri dish than Neil's offering. And Neil, who was startled by the professor's voice, quickly put it down, and there was still time for him to stabilize his hand and not cause the fall. Professor Baldwin carefully held the Petri dish with both hands and walked quickly to the test area. Before leaving, he did not forget to say something to Tolboff. You did a good job, Tove. Give me your dissertation. I hope you can stay in the lab after graduation. Hearing the professor's words, Tolboff was overjoyed. The professor not only hinted that his graduation thesis would pass smoothly, but also left himself a place in the laboratory. There is no better result than this, of course. It can be seen from Professor Baldwin's words that he is also very responsible to students. Otherwise, how can he tell what Tolboff needs? Of course, what Baldwin needs for his students has a lot to do with the Petri dish he is holding. But now he first needs to study how much penicillin is in this Petri dish. I saw him carefully placing the Petri dish under the microscope, silently observing and recording. On the other hand, Neil, who was waiting anxiously, looked at the teacher's expression cautiously until his curiosity couldn't bear it any longer. Teacher, what's the result of the test? The results were amazing. I found that this Petri dish had 231 units of penicillin, far more than we had before. In the face of his disciple's question, Professor Baldwin himself couldn't help but admire this amazing result. As the project leader, he knows best the importance of his research. He once visited Fleming, the inventor of penicillin, and he benefited a lot from his exchange of views. As for the purification of penicillin, Professor Baldwin already has his own method. Fleming, the inventor of penicillin, wanted to extract penicillin from the solution. The biggest problem he encountered was that penicillin was unstable. Not only could he not be able to evaporate the water in the solution by heating, but he could not even store it at room temperature for long. Professor Baldwin did the opposite. Instead of heating the penicillin solution, he froze the solution into a solid state and then sublimated the water in the frozen solution by pumping out the air and reducing the air pressure. This approach may seem inconceivable at first glance, but it is not difficult to understand. Place ice cubes in a closed environment at -20 deg. C. Pump out the air and reduce the air pressure until the air pressure is lower than the gas phase curve, and the ice will be transformed into water vapor through sublimation and dissipated. This method of first freezing and then removing water through sublimation is called freeze drying, or freeze drying for short. The only thing he lacks now is a way to produce penicillin on a large scale. Before, 40 units per square centimeter could not act on civilians at all, and it would only make penicillin a drug used by the upper classes. This is not Professor Baldwin's will. Although he produced mustard gas for Romania before, he stopped researching the killing thing in World War I, and now he is devoted to medicine. Fortunately, these years of research have finally come to fruition. Professor Baldwin looked at the penicillin with joy in his eyes. There are already several ideas in mind, and this is a way to further cultivate the mother penicillin. He was all too aware of the effects of penicillin, a great medicine that could change the world. A large number of diseases, including tuberculosis, will have a chance to be cured, and before these people can only wait to die. In addition, its treatment of a series of conditions of wound inflammation is also miraculous. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel. Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 668 Check End. When the news that penicillin was about to enter mass production reached Eda, Eda was troubled by one thing. In fact, Eda had forgotten about penicillin before, and he didn't see it until Fleming invented penicillin in the newspaper. But fortunately, I have enough funds in Edel, and Professor Baldwin felt guilty for developing mustard gas, and turned to research in medicine. Of course, I strongly support this rare talent in Romania. It is very important for Romania to hear the news that penicillin will be mass produced now. If nothing else, the treatment of wounded soldiers can reduce the loss of manpower for Romania. In the ensuing battle, Romania has more manpower than Italy, which is at the bottom. But it still cannot be compared with other major warring countries, which also leads to Romania need to cherish every use of manpower, and penicillin also has a good effect on other diseases. Lots of inflammation and tuberculosis. In particular, tuberculosis is a common disease now, and the characteristics of airborne infection make it extremely harmful to the human body. And penicillin works wonders for it. The news that penicillin will be industrialized and mass-produced naturally requires the cooperation of the government. So Edel read the news and handed it over to the guards. Send it to the Prime Minister's office and let the Prime Minister and the others start the construction of the penicillin plant immediately. If there is any problem, let Professor Baldwin give technical guidance. After waiting for the guard to leave, Edel picked up the telegram she had read before and felt an unusual headache. The telegram was nothing but news of the German occupation of the Czech Republic. The situation in the Czech Republic needs to be explained here. After the Munich Agreement was signed, the Czech Republic, which ceded the Sudetenland, was disheartened. In their eyes, they have been betrayed by Britain and France, and they have lost the dangerous Sudeten mountains as shelter, and it is impossible to continue to maintain national sovereignty and independence. And at this time, Poland, wide-eyed, and Hungary next to them also took the opportunity to invade the territory of the Czech Republic. Polanca was the first to occupy Cieszyn, and subsequently several villages in the Slovakian province. Hitler then acknowledged Poland's actions. In addition, Hitler also planned Koshi to Hungary in order to win over the Hungarian government. On the other hand, after the Czech Republic fell into chaos, the long repressed Slovaks established the Slovak autonomous government in the Slovak province. Under the circumstance that there are internal worries and a strong enemy externally, the Czech Republic can only choose to take refuge in Germany. Perhaps in the eyes of the world, isn't this the act of devoting yourself to feeding tigers? But this is just the idea of ordinary people, and for the ruling class, protecting their interests is the #1 priority. And on this point, Hitler saw it very clearly. So he threatened the new Czech president, Imi Kacha, and declared that he suggested the president to recognize the German occupation of Czechoslovakia, otherwise he would send the air force to bomb Prague. On the other hand, he assured the Czech ruling class that their interests would not be touched. In the face of Hitler's coercion, the Czech government, which had no resistance mentality, succumbed. So Hitler, who got the result he wanted, ordered the German army to immediately invade the Czech Republic on March 15. This becomes almost the same replica of the march into Austria, except without the flowers and the welcoming crowd. The entire march was very peaceful, because Hatcher ordered the Czechoslovak army not to resist the Germans. Hitler also came to Prague Castle on March 16 to announce the end of the Czechoslovak regime. As in history, Slovakia was independent, and as for the Czech part, 2 protectorates were established, the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. The laws and policies exercised by these 2 nominal protectorates are no different from those of Germany. In fact, it is another way of saying annexation. Moreover, after Germany annexed the Czech Republic, it immediately invested a lot of money in its industrial transformation to better meet the needs of Germany. After acquiring the Czech Republic, Germany's military industry has been greatly improved. This former Austro-Hungarian industrial base complements Germany in all aspects. Especially in the arms industry, Skoda's annual arms production is equivalent to the output of the British mainland. Moreover, among the industrialized countries in the Czech Republic, it ranks 7th in the world, after the United States, the Soviet Union, Germany, Britain, Romania, and France. If Hitler could only rely on intimidation to make Britain and France make concessions before the annexation of the Czech Republic, now he can make Britain and France think twice with his military strength. As for Germany's move to annex and dismember the Czech Republic, Britain and France did not express any excited words, although the Czech Republic was an important ally before. The performance of Britain and France has made many countries begin to consider their relations with Britain and France. For a time, contact between countries became more frequent, and officials in charge of diplomatic work were active all over the world. And now the thick smell of gunpowder smoke over Europe can even be smelled by ordinary people. In Romania, however, there is an anxious mood about Germany's annexation and dismemberment of the Czech Republic. Although Germany still respects Romania very much, it did not take the opportunity to bring Hungary to its side, and Slovakia was also independent. Although Slovakia is just a puppet country, it is still much better than a direct border between the two countries. But while Germany respects Romania in these respects, Romania feels like it's being ripped off on the terms of the crucial Munich meeting point. Because of the joint advance and retreat with Germany in the Munich conference, Britain and France have a new view on the relationship between Germany and Roth. During that time, Britain and France did a lot of diplomatic work for Romania, but because of the terms of the alliance with Germany, there were not many responses to Britain and France. Of course, the more important reason is that the conditions set by Britain and France are not enough for Romania to make a move to abandon Germany. But when Germany annexed and dismembered the Czech Republic, Romania felt the pressure. First of all, the British and French diplomatic attitudes towards Romania have dropped a lot, and Greece has also expanded its army on the grounds that Italy swallowed the Kingdom of Albania, and many arms were directly shipped by Britain and France in the name of loans. Therefore, the current Greek army has reached 300,000 people, which makes Mussolini stop small actions if he wants to make some incidents to take advantage of Greece. Seeing that the consequences of Germany's annexation of the Czech Republic are shared by the two countries, how can this make Romania satisfied? Although Edel knew that this was just the beginning, there were many people in China who had different opinions on whether to continue the covenant with Germany. Although Edel can press down with his prestige, but how to press this kind of thing is like a spring. The harder it is pressed, the stronger the rebound. And no matter how high Edel's prestige is, he can't do everything he wants, and he also wanted to see how Germany responded to this, and how much importance was attached to the Romanian ally. So for the headache, Edel continued to wait. Chapter 669, The Diplomatic War in Bucharest. 1. A Junker airliner passes through the clouds, preparing to land. Your Excellency Minister, we are about to land soon. With a reminder, Ribbentrop's thoughts were taken back. He recalled the previous exhortation by the head of state to him. Romania must be stabilized now, and a new exclusive alliance treaty with Romania needs to be signed, which is very important to Germany. That's right, the Führer has set his sights on the Polish corridor again. Hitler, who was fascinated by the restoration of the largest territory of the Third Reich, just after annexing the Czech Republic, he summoned the Polish Foreign Minister Colonel Baker, who had previously been pro-German, and issued an ultimatum to him to accept Germany conditions proposed in 1937-38 for the Danzig and Poland corridor. In the face of Hitler's request, Colonel Baker refused to follow the established policy of the Polish government, and on March 31st, he went to London, after obtaining the British diplomatic guarantee for Poland's independence, and signed the British-Polish Security Assurance Agreement with the UK on April 6, and signed a similar agreement with France on May 19. In response, Hitler officially approved the White Plan to invade Poland on April 3. On April 28, Hitler announced the abrogation of the German-Polish Non-Aggression Pact signed in 1935 on the grounds that Poland had signed a security guarantee treaty with the United Kingdom and lifted the quasi-ally state with Poland. And in this case, the importance of Romania is mentioned in the first important position. It happened that Romania's dissatisfaction with Germany was soaring because of Germany's annexation of the Czech Republic. Moreover, the Polish foreign minister is also visiting Romania, which makes Hitler very vigilant. When this conflict with Poland, Romania cannot be drawn over by Poland. Although it is impossible for Poland to give better conditions than Germany, it has to be visited. If Romania was drawn to the Polish side, Hitler would not dare to attack the Polish corridor. Poland and Romania are a huge challenge to Germany, and the British and French behind them are also likely to take the opportunity to attack, which is completely a replica of World War I and II fronts. Hitler would never allow such a thing to happen. Moreover, Hitler also gave a concession condition before coming, and he must keep Romania in the alliance. However, it was entirely up to Ribbentrop to decide how to talk in the middle, so he was both excited and worried about it. But whatever his mood, the Junkers landed at Bucharest's airport. And the Romanian Foreign Minister Costel, who was waiting on the side, immediately greeted him with a smile. Hello, Mr. Ribbentrop. Welcome to Bucharest. Hello, Your Excellency Costa. Thank you very much for welcoming me in person. After a brief warm welcome from the guest of honor, Ribbentrop and Costa left together in a car. In the car, Ribbentrop immediately asked what he was most concerned about. I heard that Colonel Baker, the Polish foreign minister, is visiting Romania. It's nothing. Colonel Baker is here to talk about economic and trade cooperation between the two countries and other issues facing the German foreign minister beside him. Costel replied indifferently. Only now did I know that I asked Romania. When I dismembered and annexed the Czech Republic, I didn't even have a connection, and it was too disrespectful to Romania. Yes, Foreign Secretary Costel has a share among the disgruntled. Ribbentrop was not offended by a soft nail being hit here by Costel. He was also mentally prepared for this. Before the annexation and dismemberment of the Czech Republic, Germany did not go through with Romania, and everyone complained. But this time, he was mentally prepared. When Ribbentrop had just arrived in Bucharest, the Polish foreign minister Colonel Baker had just walked out of the Prime Minister's office. Just talking with Prime Minister Mihalika, he didn't get the results he wanted. Although he has played all the cards given to him by the Polish government, he still failed to achieve the result he wanted, turning the Robo alliance from a pure anti-Soviet alliance to a real alliance. Colonel Baker recalled the development of the relationship between the two countries over the years, and could not help but regret. Why didn't the government see the prodigal ambitions of the German head of state before? If it had seen it before, it would make Poland's diplomacy more proactive. At least diplomacy with Romania should be further strengthened. Unfortunately, after the death of Marshal Piłsudski, Poland's diplomatic work became more important to Britain and France under the government's instructions. This is not without basis. According to the military's prediction, as long as the Polish army withstands the German attack on the border for a month, the attack from Britain and France will be enough to defeat Germany. Therefore, it is not unreasonable for Poland to focus its diplomatic work on Britain and France. Moreover, the results of diplomatic work with Britain and France are also very good. The British-Polish Security Assurance Agreement and the French-Polish Security Assurance Agreement have been signed one after another, allowing Poland to gain a strong ally in the west of Germany. And what satisfied Poland most with these two clauses was that as long as Poland was attacked by Germany, Britain and France would provide unconditional military assistance to Poland and were obliged to declare war on Germany. Only such a guarantee can satisfy Poland, and it is not worth the efforts of Poland to focus its diplomatic work on Britain and France in recent years. However, there are gains and losses. Germany took the opportunity to strengthen its diplomatic work with Romania and signed the terms of the alliance when Poland put its diplomatic work on Britain and France. This made Poland a little uncomfortable. Although it signed the same alliance with the Soviet Union as Poland, it is believed that Hitler, like Poland, wanted to turn this alliance clause into a substantial alliance. During Baker's visit to Romania this time, it was obvious that Romania's attitude was very vague and basically did not give any affirmative answers. Although Baker does not understand Chinese, he must know the meaning of the phrase for sale. And just as Colonel Baker was about to return to the car to rest, he saw a car with a Polish badge creak to a stop in front of him. Ambassador Belowski's secretary jumped out. Minister, I just got the news that German Foreign Minister Ribbentrop arrived in Bucharest and was greeted by His Excellency Foreign Minister Costel. Hearing this news made Baker feel the seriousness of the matter and saw his face tighten. Drive immediately, go back to the embassy, and stop for the afternoon trip. First point. Colonel Baker thought on his knees, and knew the intention of the German foreign minister. He must be the same as himself. So now he needs to discuss countermeasures with the embassy, and at the same time telegram to Huesha, asking for better conditions for himself. Baker had a hunch that this diplomatic work was related to Poland's survival. Although he didn't know why he suddenly felt this way, the idea suddenly appeared in his mind. Chapter 670, The Diplomatic War in Bucharest, Part 2. Your Majesty Edel, this time I came here, mainly to enhance the relationship between the two countries. As for the previous Czech issue, due to the negligence of the staff, our country has not been able to inform your country in time. My country is deeply sorry. Relationships are very important, so I came here to make up for my previous mistakes. Ribbentrop, who was meeting Edel, told the Romanian ruler about the mistakes of the German Foreign Office. In fact, there is no way to deceive this, and he knows this. But diplomacy sometimes fucks like this, knowing that this is just a cover-up rhetoric, but the two still have to pretend to be disgusting. It turned out to be the case, and I also said, why we only found out about it after the fact. After Edel said he had raised the topic, Ribbentrop immediately followed up. Your Majesty Edel, this time, in addition to making up for the previous diplomatic mistakes, we also hope to further deepen the relationship between our two countries. As we all know, the exchanges between our two countries have a long history. As early as the time of Your Majesty Carol, our country and Romania have a long history of exchanges. The ties were very close. But when His Majesty was in the Regency, the ties between the two countries deepened. Although there were misunderstandings, we were more cooperative. Especially after the First World War, our two countries' economic and cooperation in the military field is further deepening. When I come this time, I hope that we can further deepen cooperation in other areas such as diplomacy. For this reason, our country has prepared terms that are very beneficial to our two countries. When Ribbentrop was talking non-stop and wanted to continue to connect the two countries further, Edel waved to stop him from continuing. Foreign Minister Ribbentrop, you need to discuss this matter with the government. For these diplomatic matters, the government is in charge. What's going on? Ribbentrop was a little stunned by Edel's words. The man actually said that he would no longer be involved in Romania's diplomacy. How could this be possible? In Europe, who does not know that you are the most powerful monarch? Anything in Romania can be carried out without your consent. However, although Ribbentrop was talking in his heart, since Edel said that he didn't care, then the next words were really hard to say. So in the face of such a sudden situation, Ribbentrop had nothing to do for a while. He had to speak to Edel. Since Your Majesty is no longer involved in diplomatic matters, then I will not say it, so as not to disturb Your Majesty. Since Edel said he was not involved in diplomatic issues, Ribbentrop naturally needed to find another way. After chatting with Edel for a while, the foreign minister left in a hurry. Edel looked at the figure of Ribbentrop leaving, and showed a playful smile. Every time these Germans want a breakthrough from him, let the government talk this time. That's right. Edel intends to hand this over to the government. Although he has been leading the negotiation before, it can speed up the negotiation process, but in many cases there is no room for recovery. And he was not very suitable as a negotiator, to tell the truth, although no one told him, but he knew it. And this time, if the Germans are not allowed to take some detours, how can they pay attention to Romania's attitude? Of course, Edel still needs to master the degree of it, but he is not worried about it at all. Ribbentrop walked out of the palace with a worried look on his face, and he always felt weird during the whole interview. But before he could straighten out his thoughts, he saw the secretary waiting outside, walking 3 steps and 2 steps beside him. An hour ago, Colonel Baker, the Polish foreign minister, went to visit Deputy Prime Minister Korstf. He was not at all surprised to hear the secretary speak about the movements of the Polish foreign minister. Just like when he visited the Romanian king this time, the Poles would also stare at his actions. I see. People continue to stare at the Polish embassy and the Polish foreign minister, and I want to know what's going on at any time. But if you know it, you still have to keep an eye on it, at least until Romania makes a statement. There will be no less such things. After sitting back in the car, Ribbentrop needed to consider the next itinerary. After a while, Ribbentrop told the driver, Go to the Prime Minister's office. Let's visit Prime Minister Mahara K. Point. Since the King Edward doesn't care about this, then the Prime Minister will start his visit. Point. When Ribbentrop was about to visit the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Krostov was personally sending Polish Foreign Minister Baker out of the house. Point. Minister Baker, I already understand what you said. I'm also willing to see the further development of the relationship between the two countries. However, this matter is not for me to make a decision, but I support the further development of the relationship with Poland from the bottom of my heart. Further, now I will use my influence to run for your country. Point. In the face of Vice Chancellor Kirsteff's blatant words, Baker is naturally grateful. Thank you for your attention to the relationship between the two countries. Poland will not forget your old friend. As long as you have anything you can use, you can go to the Polish embassy to find Ambassador Berlowski, and he will provide assistance within his capacity. Point. That's right. Baker is off the beaten track now. In addition to normal diplomacy, he also began to smuggle personal diplomacy. His first target was Deputy Prime Minister Korstv, and the result was not bad. The Deputy Prime Minister from Bulgaria was very satisfied with the gift he sent and promised to run for Poland. Point. Such a result naturally made Baker overjoyed. It must be known that this person can influence almost 30% of the senior government officials at present, and such a politically influential figure, it is very good for the next diplomatic work to turn to Poland. Point. Although it took a lot of money to win this Vice Chancellor, it seems that everything is worth it now. At least it gives Poland an advantage in the diplomatic battle over Romania, although this advantage is likely to last for a short period of time. Point. Because Baker knew that the presence of a large number of German technicians and their years of cooperation made many people in Romania have a good impression of Germany. But at present Poland is ahead, and the next step is to maintain this advantage. Point. After sending Baker away, Vice Chairman Kirsteff, who was smiling before he turned around, returned to the office with a gloomy expression on the verge of dripping. Point. What do these Poles think of me, and insult me like this? After speaking, he was still angry, picked up a precious antique sent by Poland, and threw it on the ground with a snap. Point. No way. Kirsteff is very depressed. He negotiated with the Prime Minister that each would be in charge of one side, and he chose the Polish side. I thought that the Polish foreign minister had some means, but I didn't expect to come up with this means. Although this works for many people, it will only be counterproductive for him. Point. If there is anyone in Romania who will not be tempted by money, Kirsteff thinks he can rank in the top 3. It seems that the Polish foreign minister is not doing well in his work, and he has not even figured out his own temperament. Chapter 671 The Diplomatic War in Bucharest, Part 2. Your Excellency Prime Minister, our country's attention to Romania is very obvious. Our country is willing to shrink its influence in the Balkans only to Slovenia, and we will open up Slovakia to allow Romanian goods to enter. In addition, our country also we are willing to assist Romania with 50,000 tons of special steel and a batch of tungsten alloy cutter heads. At the same time, my country also recognizes that your country has diplomatic priority over Greece, Yugoslavia, and Turkey. Of course, if we fight against the Soviet Union in the future, we fully recognize Romania's oath of sovereignty over Ukraine. Inside the Prime Minister's office, German Foreign Minister Ribbentrop was speaking out on his terms. I saw that, after he finished speaking in one breath, a sense of exhaustion came to his heart, and he picked up the coffee and took a sip. Point. These days, he was exhausted, and the competition with the Polish Foreign Minister Colonel Baker made him not dare to relax. The negotiation has also changed from a hint to a blatant statement, and various conditions are completely put on the table for negotiation. This rough style made Ribbentrop a little uncomfortable at first, but now practice makes perfect. Point. There is no way that the current situation is very unfavorable to Germany. German executives, including the head of state, generally believe that if Romania falls to Poland, then Germany's request for the Polish corridor can only be postponed, because Germany cannot face Seluobo at the same time country's military strength. Point. As for Britain and France, the wise heads of state have already seen its essence, and this time Britain and France will retreat like the previous Austrian and Czech crisis. Because the people of both countries don't want to fight at all, and the German people have enough confidence in breaking this damn versatile system. Point. However, in the face of Poland and Romania, Hitler did not dare to do anything, especially in the face of Romania, because he found that his previous judgment may have been wrong. Romania's mobilization was not for the recovery of the former Bulgarian territory point, because Romania had not disbanded the 500,000 troops mobilized by Greece before, but continued to strengthen its huge army, which was already one of the best in Europe. Currently Romania has 1.57 million troops, only less than the Soviet Union, and Britain, France, and Germany have not yet gone to war. The army was not mobilized on a large scale, and the size of the army is not as large as Romania, which has already begun to mobilize, and Romanian factories are still producing a steady stream of arms to arm the army. This made Hitler, who knew a little about Romania, feel a bit of a bad breath. So before Romania did not make a statement, he had no idea whether to continue to be tough on Poland. It's not just that he has no bottom, the German high level and military are even more unconfident about it point, because the blitzkrieg that Germany has been rehearsing for so long has not been fully demonstrated. In the previous Russo war, although Romania used it once, it was only used in a local war, and the distance was not long, less than 300 kilometers. This is not convincing. Although Guderian is confident, there are still different opinions at the top in Germany point. Therefore, many people now express doubts about whether Germany can defeat Poland in a short time point, not to mention adding a Romanian. If Hitler had forcibly ordered an attack on Romania, allied with Poland, the German opposition would have likely shaken its foundations. Therefore, Germany is bound to win the diplomatic win over Romania this time. However, although Germany has a tendency to never give up, it does not mean that Romania can offer prices at will, because Germany still has something to prepare. But this is a last resort, because it is enough to plunge Germany into an even bigger vortex point. Ribbentrop's exhaustion of the negotiations also reflects the current state of affairs between the two countries. To win over Romania points due to the rivalry between the two countries, the conditions set by the two countries are also rising. Ribbentrop had already made clear the conditions given by the Führer before, and the conditions given this time were resent from Berlin after negotiation point. As for Prime Minister Mahalakay, who was sitting across from him and listening, Ribbentrop knew without looking. He must have smiled and said that sentence politely. We need to discuss the conditions of your country, and I will give you an answer later. As for your country's conditions, we need to discuss it, and we will give you an answer later. Sure enough, Ribbentrop was not disappointed, and Prime Minister Mahalakay really said this again point, but this time Ribbentrop didn't intend to leave immediately, and he suddenly said with a serious expression point, Your Excellency Prime Minister, I'm tired of such negotiations. Now I will add one last clause to this condition. If your country forms a closer alliance with our country, then my country is willing to support your country in the acquisition of Western Galicia. I know your country. The country has always been very eager for this land, but in view of the difficult relationship with Poland, this time my country can help your country to fulfill such a wish point. This time Ribbentrop stood up to leave without waiting for Prime Minister Mahalakay to answer, but thinking of something, he stopped. I saw him turn around and say something. By the way, this is the final condition of our country, and it will not be changed again. Point after speaking, Ribbentrop strode away. Point he was fed up with such endless price increases, so he simply finished the conditions. If it didn't work, he could only think about the next trip to Moscow. Although he also hates the communists, it is not impossible to take advantage of them when necessary. It is believed that Stalin was also very eager for Western Ukraine, and he could lure the greedy polar bear with Lviv, the pearl of Eastern Galicia, as bait. Point thinking of this, Ribbentrop felt better, and the grievances he received in Bucharest were swept away. Although the consequence of doing so is to become an enemy of the world. But as a last resort, why can't Germany do this? Anyway, they have had enough of the humiliation they suffered in Versailles after their surrender, and they are willing to make a deal with the devil in order to save all this. After Ribbentrop left, Prime Minister Mahalakay couldn't help but wrinkle his forehead. He heard deep resentment from Ribbentrop's tone, and it was obvious that the late diplomatic breakthrough had made the foreign minister a little annoyed. Point this made the Prime Minister hesitant about whether to use this method or not, and whether the words of the foreign minister Ribbentrop were really old-fashioned, or whether it was a diplomatic strategy, made it difficult for him to make a decision. Point maybe it's time to ask your majesty's opinion. After thinking of this, He picked up the phone. Pick up His Majesty Edel for me and say I need to ask His Majesty's opinion if I have something. No way. For the uncertain Prime Minister Maharake, it would be good to seek His Majesty's opinion. Although such a habit is not good, such a major event concerning Romania still requires the consent of His Majesty. Chapter 672 The Diplomatic War in Bucharest. End. Prime Minister Maharake is reporting to Edel on the scene of several meetings with German Foreign Minister Ribbentrop. And Edel listened very carefully, interrupting the Prime Minister's speech from time to time to ask for details. In addition to the two of them, there were also Deputy Prime Minister Korstf, Foreign Minister Kostel, and the military representative Admiral Friet. These people were all listening intently, and no one dared to interrupt the Prime Minister. Because the Prime Minister's report is the most important to Romania, everyone can see the tension in Europe now, and a new round of war will be staged. And with Romania's rapid development over the years, it is impossible to be as neutral as the last war. And how Romania should choose a team, this is a very serious problem. Once selected, Romania's strength has been further expanded. If you don't choose well, so many years of hard work will likely be in vain. Therefore, no one at the scene did not care about it, and everyone analyzed the intention of the German foreign minister from the words of the Prime Minister. Your Majesty, this is the situation. After telling all about his meeting with Ribbentrop, Prime Minister Maharake stopped speaking. After listening to the Prime Minister's words, Edel continued to ask, so do you think the last sentence of the German foreign minister was a threat, intimidation, or true? Edel's question made Prime Minister Maharake shake his head. I don't know. It's hard to judge. Edel, who failed to get an answer from the Prime Minister, threw the question to others. What do you all think? Facing Edel's question, everyone present shook their heads to answer. Your Majesty, I can't judge. Your Majesty, I have no clue about this either. His Majesty, just kidding. Even the Prime Minister at the scene can't figure it out. Can they make a judgment? After listening to the statement, facing a group of shaking heads, Edel couldn't help but want to burst out. To say that these people didn't think of it, how is this possible? It's just that some people thought of it, but didn't want to say it. But Edel didn't care what others said or not. He directly asked by name. Deputy Minister Krostov, how's your situation on your side? Those present knew, as soon as they heard it, Your Majesty has a choice to make. So Kiki looked at His Excellency the Deputy Prime Minister, and even the Prime Minister was no exception. Faced with the attention of so many people, Korstef was not panic at all, because he was well prepared. After receiving the call to discuss matters in the palace, he was mentally prepared. The last time Colonel Baker asked me about the conditions was that Poland would be willing to reduce the tariff to 5% and at the same time purchase military supplies worth $200 million from our country. In order to show their sincerity, they were willing to pay in advance. In addition, if there is a war with Germany, Poland negotiated with Britain and France on the transfer of the Kozice and Przezov areas in the east and Slovakia to our control. Hearing what Krostov said, many people present who didn't know the details of the negotiation couldn't help but pursed their lips. Compared with the conditions in Germany, Poland is much worse. No way. Although Poland's economy recovers quickly, it can bring far less benefits to Romania. Not to mention that Poland still needs to consider the feelings of Britain and France, so its conditions cannot be compared with Germany, and it can only find a way economically. The condition for purchasing military materials before delivery is estimated to be financial assistance to Romania. And Krostov's words made Edel also understand the attitude of the Poles. Perhaps the more hope of these Poles is to use the threat of Britain and France to make Germany have more concerns. That's why there is no urgency to fight for Romania. Edel, who already had a preliminary idea in his heart, said something casually. It seems that Poland doesn't pay enough attention to our country. And Edel casually said a word and immediately let the people present understand the king's inclination. It seems that His Majesty is not satisfied with the conditions in Poland at all, so it will be much easier to do in the future. I saw Foreign Minister Kostel immediately stood up. Your Majesty, I think the conditions of the Poles do not pay much attention to our country's needs. Everyone knows that our country is currently in two directions. One is in Ukraine, where it will directly face the threat of the Soviet Union, and Poland is not mentioned in the conditions at all. The other direction is on the Mediterranean and Macedonian side, and Poland does not give our country any help. Kostel's intentions have already been revealed. He is extremely dissatisfied with Poland's condition, because apart from economic interests, this condition does not match Romania's focus at all. Although he had complained about Germany before, but compared with Germany, Poland turned a blind eye to Romania's needs. It is because the foreign minister has wronged Poland. For not mentioning Ukraine, Poland, under the impetus of Britain and France, is negotiating with the Soviet Union about ensuring Poland's security. Although Poland is not satisfied with Britain and France forcing Poland to negotiate with the Soviet Union, it is impossible to discuss the Ukraine issue with Romania just like this as for the Mediterranean and Macedonian issues. Poland is even more out of reach. And in the attitude of Poland, they think Britain and France are more important than Romania. Under the leadership of Kostel, others were not far behind and came forward to criticize Poland for this condition. I think this condition in Poland can be rejected directly. That's right. We helped them resist the Soviet invasion in vain. Now with the help of Britain and France, they forget us so quickly. The speeches of the people present made the situation one-sided immediately. In their mouths, Poland is not worthy of Romania's continued alliance with it. Seeing that everyone agreed with Germany's conditions, Edel made his initial final decision. Your Excellency the Prime Minister. Exist. When you go back, inform His Excellency the German Foreign Minister Ribbentrop and discuss the remaining details with him. As ordered. In fact, how could Edel, who has memories of later generations, join the Polish side? This country that was defeated without even holding on to Germany's attack for a month was nothing more than waste. He didn't want Desu to divide up Romania after dividing up Poland. That's right. Edel has always believed that it is necessary to join the German camp in order to allow Romania to obtain the greatest benefits. It's not that Edel likes Edel because his family is from Germany, it's because everything Romania needs at the moment can be obtained in an alliance with Germany. Romania needs Ukraine, and Germany can give assurances. Romania needs Macedonia and the Mediterranean, and Germany is more than willing to see it. Even far, Romania needs Egypt. Germany will also have limited support. Because Germany and Romania are both challenges to the order, they both need to break the old interests and seek greater interests for themselves. There is another reason for Romania. That is, Romania's development has entered a bottleneck, and it must have more land and population in order to continue to grow bigger and stronger. This is something that Britain and France cannot give, and can only do it by themselves. Chapter 673 Europe 3 Axis 1. Okay, I will meet the Prime Minister on time. With the phone in his hand, Ribbentrop was all excited. He finally lived up to the entrustment of the head of state, and Romania agreed. The half-truths and half-truths of his previous words finally had an effect. That's right. Half of Ribbentrop's last conversation with Prime Minister Mihalika was his anger at that time. At that time he was indeed a little fed up with Romania's endless delays, and could not help but quote Germany's final conditions. By the time he returned to the embassy, rationality regained the upper hand. However, he resisted the thought of trying to explain, and calmly waited for a while at the embassy. On the one hand, Ribbentrop couldn't hold his face, and on the other hand, he also wanted to see what decision Romania should make under such persecution. Because he feels negotiating Romania has always been vague, without a slightly accurate statement. And the result finally was like what he thought. Romania agreed to Germany's conditions, which made a big stone in his heart fall. Although he still has a backup plan. If the negotiation with the Soviet Union includes the terms of Romania, the Steel Comrade will definitely speak loudly. In addition, the Soviet Union and Romania have been at a disadvantage in many wars. Although in terms of national strength, the Soviet Union has the advantage, but in terms of battlefield performance, Romania still has the advantage. Of course, this is the case when neither side is using their full strength. If they use their full strength to eliminate other interference, then it must be a tragic victory for the Soviet Union. This is the conclusion made by the military, and the German high level including Hitler agrees with this conclusion. Ribbentrop is one of them. If this is the case, then Germany will become the main force in the war against Romania, which does not meet Germany's needs. And now that Romania agreed to the reply, Ribbentrop began to prepare for the next talks, after releasing the worried new ones. Although the major conditions have been negotiated, there are still some small details that need to be discussed by the two parties. And Ribbentrop called his deputy for this. Get everyone ready to go with the details of the Romanian terms you mean. When Ribbentrop nodded to confirm, the deputy immediately went to prepare happily. It's a pleasure to see your excellency the prime minister again. I'm also very happy to meet your excellency. After the two were greeted, Prime Minister Maherakis said, Your Excellency Foreign Minister, our country is very satisfied with the conditions put forward by your country, and is also happy to strengthen the relationship with Germany. So this time to invite you to come, it is to discuss the specifics for Prime Minister Maherakis. Since he has decided to accept Germany's conditions, he will show his attitude directly. For some petty gain, it is not taken by the wise. Thank you for Romania's importance to our country. It is also very important for Germany to form a closer alliance with your country. The alliance between the two countries will definitely bring a new atmosphere to the world. Ribbentrop also spoke very naturally, some beautiful words after the alliance between the two countries. In fact, the conditions for the negotiation between the two have ended, and now there are only some possible minor gaps to be negotiated. But it doesn't need them to talk about it. After the people below have negotiated it, it's fine for the two of them to have a look. In this regard, the two parties did not have too much entanglement, and it took less than 3 days to completely negotiate the terms. According to the terms of the two parties, Romania will receive diplomatic priority in Greece, Yugoslavia, except Slovenia, Turkey, and Turkey. Germany's diplomatic work in the region must not cause any diplomatic trouble to Romania. In addition, Germany fully recognizes Romania's special interests in Ukraine as a whole, including the right to support an independent government, partition and annex the region. In addition, if Germany is at war with Poland in the future, Romania is also obliged to provide necessary support, including reinforcement and declaration of war. Germany will also guarantee that after the victory over Poland, the Western Galicia region, as well as the two regions of Krakow and Kielce, will also be handed over to Romania. These two regions will only be given if Romania declares war on Poland after sending troops to fight it. As a condition of Germany's recognition, Romania will abolish the Polo League and sign a mutual defense alliance with Germany. This clause will bring the two countries closer together politically, diplomatically, and militarily. This clause is mainly divided into 3 parts: military, economic, and foreign exchange assistance. The most important one is that, as long as the two countries are attacked by any country, the other party actively declares war, then the other country must give military assistance, including support military supplies, dispatching reinforcement, declaring war, etc. are all included. It is precisely for this one that Germany has spent so much energy, because Germany has also spent a lot of thought in order to ensure a strong ally. When all the conditions were negotiated, it was signed by Romanian Foreign Minister Kostel and German Foreign Minister Ribbentrop. Next, as long as Edel and Hitler sign, the clause will take effect. Will the two disagree to sign? Of course not. When Hitler got to negotiate the terms of the alliance with Romania, he even shouted with joy. According to the people close to the head of state, the original words of the head of state at that time were, "Now no one can stop Germany from regaining its homeland, not the Poles, nor Britain and France." After signing the terms, Ribbentrop flew back to Germany in a hurry with the alliance contract. When Hitler took over the treaty from Ribbentrop, he was not in a hurry to see it, but instead asked his foreign minister, "It's not clear in the telegram. Can you describe the process to me in detail?" "No problem, my Führer." In the face of Hitler's inquiry, Ribbentrop naturally did not dare to neglect, and immediately told everything he had experienced in Romania. During this period, Hitler just listened carefully, but from the look in his eyes, he could see that he had been thinking. After Ribbentrop finished speaking, Hitler asked suddenly, "You said it's not good for us to invite Edel to visit Germany." Hitler's words made Ribbentrop's eyes light up immediately, and he said quickly, "The head of state, this method is absolutely possible. And Romania is only allied with our country, and will definitely not refuse this request." That's right. From Ribbentrop's words, Hitler felt that this was not safe, and he planned to invite Edel to visit Germany. And his move is really a second move. As we all know, Edel's foreign visits are very rare, so many years of visits can be counted on one hand. Compared with other countries, Edel is like a Notaku in later generations, only willing to wander around 1/3 of his own acre point, and this time, as long as Edel appears in Germany, it is a silent expression of support for Germany. Enough to make the outside world speculate about the relationship between the two countries, and this will also be a silent repression for Poland. In addition, the terms of the alliance between Germany and Italy are being negotiated, and Hitler now hopes to use the Romanian relationship to speed up the negotiations with Italy. Chapter 674 Europe 3 Axis 2. Germany's request soon reached Romania, and after receiving the news, Eder agreed after a brief consideration. Eder also has his own considerations for agreeing to visit Germany so quickly. In the future, after solving the threat of the Soviet Union, Romania's attention will turn to the Mediterranean direction. The reason is very simple. At present, the Middle East is still a barren land. Who would have thought that there is a huge amount of oil underground? And for Romania's interests, Romania in the Middle East must be in the hands of it, so taking it from Britain and France is the only option. Then, as the main point for Romania, to connect to the Middle East, the Eastern Mediterranean must be in Romania's hands, and now he had better go to Germany in person, to negotiate with Hitler about the Mediterranean Sea. Of course, Italy, as a Mediterranean Sea power country, should not forget it. The Romanian family alone is powerless to capture the region, and it is necessary to pull in Italy, a natural ally. Just as Italy was negotiating an alliance with Germany, Eder planned to meet the leader Mussolini again. In order to pull Italy into the chariot. Eder moved quickly, and after agreeing to Hitler, he immediately prepared to take a car to Berlin. When Eder set off from Bucharest, Mussolini, who was also in Romania, planned to set off. Compared with Edel's quiet trip, and not many people seeing him off, Mussolini's trip was nothing short of fanfare. Officials of all sizes appeared at the scene, which was simply overwhelming. And Mussolini, who likes to be in the limelight, made a big speech when he was interviewed by the media at the station. As if this visit to Germany is not to negotiate a treaty of alliance, but to contribute to world peace. Mussolini's remarks naturally attracted the attention of Europe to Munich, the place of the meeting, which made Hitler, who had planned to keep a low profile, scolded secretly, but the naval strength possessed by Italy made it impossible for him to attack. So when Eder arrived in Munich, he found that there were a large number of reporters here. Your Majesty Eder, these are the journalists who came with Prime Minister Mussolini. After sending one person to understand the situation, Edel stopped talking. He didn't care about it, because when the war broke out, it would be clear who was standing with whom, let alone Edel and history as a reference point. Although the rise of Romania has changed some of the possible directions of history. But who is the enemy at the moment? Who are the future allies? Basically at a glance. Because the general direction has not been changed, Edel can use history as a reference for many trends. This naturally makes Edel feel like a duck in water, help Romania get a lot of benefits from it. And now for the next World War II, with Romania's participation in the war, Edel will no longer be able to grasp this advantage, so he can only rely on his own judgment. This kind of feeling is really unpleasant. It seems that one person relies on the strategy to play the game, and when half of the strategy is played, the strategy is taken away. Leaving the station, and boarded to go to Nymphenburg Palace, where he would meet Hitler and Mussolini to talk about the interests of the nations. While Edel was still in the car, Mussolini, who had already arrived at Nymphenburg Palace, was discussing with his son-in-law Ciano, who was arriving. What do you think of the visit of King Eder of Romania this time? Facing his son-in-law and confidant, Mussolini did not appear careless, but instead had a slightly sad expression. Ciano, the son-in-law, of course knows why, seeing the smoke over Europe, but Italy is not ready. Although Italy had previously announced that it would expand its army by half, anyone with a discerning eye could see that this was just Italy's plan. The current division was changed from 3 regiments to 2 regiments, and a group of 2 regiments was formed. All this is caused by a lack of money. Speaking of which, due to the development of Libyan oil, according to the road, Italy should be richer. But things backfired. With Libyan oil, Italy's resentment towards the Mediterranean became stronger. They started construction of many battleships in a row. Yeshu's 380 and 406 large caliber artillery was simply majestic point, but being handsome comes at a price, and Italy is no exception. These giant ships with a displacement of up to 30,000 to 40,000 tons not only require high construction costs, but also require more maintenance costs. Although the decommissioning of all the battleships built in the previous World War would reduce maintenance costs, the maintenance costs of new battleships were originally higher than those of old battleships, which made half of the income added by Italy go into it. So according to reason, there should be half of it, right? Yes, but Italy fought 3 wars in a row: the Ethiopian War, the Spanish Civil War, Italy was still the main force, and the Albanian War. These 3 wars, plus the investment in the colony, spent the remaining half cleanly. The Spanish Civil War is now over. In December 1938, the National Army invaded Madrid and the top officials of the Republican government fled to the Soviet Union. The end of the Civil War was declared as the top echelons of the Republican government fled. However, the newly inaugurated Franco regime, in the face of an economy ravaged by the Civil War, requested economic assistance from the 3 countries of the ILO. Among them, the amount of aid from Germany and Romania is not large, but Italy is in need of Spain, so the amount of aid is large. The aid of up to 80 billion lira has made the Italian treasury even more empty. The original Italian loan can be repaid slowly, as long as the Spanish economy recovers. But I didn't expect the situation to change so quickly after the Munich conference. In Europe, where there was only a little tension, thick smoke was immediately filled with gunpowder. Italy was caught off guard, and only then did they feel the consequences of their previous spending. At such a tense moment in Europe, his own treasury is empty, and he cannot even complete basic military expansion. So at this time, Italy can't rely on its own strength to want to benefit from one or the other, and can only join one of them. Mussolini actually preferred to form an alliance with Romania, but although Romania has always had close relations with Italy, he was not in a hurry to form an alliance. Romania does not need Italy as its ally. It is not. Romania has always wanted to form an alliance with Italy, but if Italy and Romania form an alliance, it will immediately bring dramatic changes to the 2 countries. At least Romania will have a very difficult time getting Thessaloniki, because the alliance between the 2 countries will definitely become the target of the British and French suppression, or it will take precedence over Germany. This is why Edel is not too concerned about the alliance with Italy. In the face of his father-in-law's question, Siono, the son-in-law and foreign minister, immediately answered, "Father-in-law, I think Edel's arrival this time is very beneficial to our country's negotiations." Siono's words immediately pointed to Mussolini. Yes, both countries have needs for the Balkans and the Mediterranean. Both countries need help from each other until the region is completely divided up. Therefore, Romania and Italy are natural allies, not to mention that both countries are currently German allies and quasi-allies. In the face of Germany's formidable strength, only the 2 countries can form a group to ensure that their interests are not damaged. So for Edel's visit, Italy is happy to see it. Chapter 675 Europe 3 Axis 3. When Edel arrived at Nymphenburg Palace, there was a crowd of people standing at the door. There were only 2 people standing in front, Hitler and Mussolini. When Edel got out of the car, the 2 immediately stepped forward to greet him. Hitler, the host, was the first to speak with a smile. "Welcome to His Majesty Edel to Munich, all the way is going well. I'm very grateful to the head of state for his concern, and the journey has been very smooth. Compared with the last time, Germany has changed too fast now, and it is completely different from the last time. And the people on the streets are also full of vitality, fully showing the vitality of Germany. Good momentum. I believe that in the future, under the leadership of His Excellency the Führer, Germany will surely reproduce the glory of Germany." Edel's pretty words come right out of his mouth. Who hasn't praised others? And of course he is very clear about what Hitler likes to hear. In the face of Edel's praise, Hitler waved his hand. This is the result of the efforts of all Germans. As long as all Germans are united as one, no difficulties can stop us. Fortunately, Hitler is still very awake, knowing that his Aryan rhetoric can't come out yet. And after a brief chat with Hitler, Ed certainly wouldn't let Mussolini be left out in the cold. Hello, Your Excellency. Hello, King Edel. After a brief greeting, Edel was photographed with Hitler and Mussolini. In this photo shoot, the most famous photo was born. In the photo, Hitler, the host, is standing in the middle, while Mussolini and Edel are standing on the left and right of him. All three of them are looking at the camera with smiles on their faces. However, Mussolini smiled unnaturally, while Edel looked relaxed, and Hitler raised his head a little high with a little arrogance. The three people's three attitudes made this photo known to the world quickly, and later generations also carefully analyzed the performance of the three countries in World War II, saying that this photo also represents the different results of the three countries. But now the three of them walked to Nymphenburg Palace immediately after taking the photo, because Hitler, who was the master, was going to hold a welcome dinner for Edel at night. In the evening, the Nymphenburg Palace was brightly lit, with guests coming and going in the hall, high-ranking government officials and generals everywhere, and the focus of the banquet must be the three heads of state. And the whole banquet is also centered on three people, spread out. What's interesting is that I don't know whether the status of the guests is intentional or unintentional. It is also proportional to this center. The higher the position, the more important the person is, the closer they are to the three. For example, Italian Foreign Minister Ciano had a very happy conversation with German Foreign Minister Ribbentrop and Romanian Foreign Minister Costel. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your hospitality this time. At the center point, Edel is thanking Hitler for his hospitality. Your Majesty Edel, this is what our country should do. Your country and Italy are our most valued allies, and they should be as important to both countries. Hitler, in the face of Edel's words of thanks, kept emphasizing the importance of Romania and Italy. This made Mussolini, who was listening to Hitler's speech, want to roll his eyes a little. Italy is really so important to Germany, so it shouldn't care so much about conditions. Isn't it the discount price given to Italy for 15 million tons of coal every year, which is worth Germany's preoccupation with it? Edel didn't know what Mussolini was thinking, so he continued to speak. At present in the Balkans, Greece, which is supported by Britain and France, is becoming more and more excessive, and its domestic public opinion is beginning to be more and more excessive towards my country and Italy. Is this really the case in Greece? Edel said yes, then yes, no also. And Edel's words made Mussolini immediately interested. Does the Romanian king mean to do something to Greece? Is this a signal to Italy? It is simply impossible to say that Italy has no interest in Greek territory. However, in the face of Greece, which is supported by Britain and France, the weak Italy cannot be as tough as Germany and Romania. However, if Romania is added, then Italy will not be afraid. The strength of the fleets of the two countries is higher than that of Britain and France in the Mediterranean. So Mussolini expected Edel to continue talking about it. Unlike Mussolini, Hitler had no interest in the Mediterranean. To be more precise, he was interested and did not have any influence on Zhejiang. So in the face of Edel's opening, Hitler maintained his normal heart to see what the Romanian wanted to say. After seeing that both of them were attracted, Edel continued to speak. My country believes that it is necessary to punish the situation in Greece and let them know that they are a little more serious. Don't think that they can do whatever they want by hugging the thighs of Britain and France. As soon as Edel's voice fell, Hitler immediately spoke better. His Majesty Edel is right. Those who think that with the support of Britain and France, we can ignore our country should be punished. Only by destroying these unrealistic illusions can they sit down and talk. Obviously, Hitler was very supportive of Edel's words. Anyway, Greece and Germany are out of reach. It is better to let Romania create a conflict and distract the attention of Britain and France. And it can also make Italy tempted to end, which is beneficial to Germany without any harm. Why not support it? Edel's words obviously aroused Mussolini's heart, but he knew that this was not the time for tyranny, so he said, we in Italy also believe that the recent developments in Greece are very unsatisfactory, but the specific situation needs to be understood to know. Mussolini was obviously reluctant to talk about Greece in public, but Edel knew from his words that he was tempted. But Edel is not in a hurry at all, and there is still time to talk about Greece. But he thought of another thing, and took this opportunity to continue speaking. Mein Kampf, written by Mr. Hitler, is truly a masterpiece. It not only illustrates the future development of Germany, but also sweeps away those details. When Hitler saw Edel mentioning his Mein Kampf, He was very happy that the Romanian talked about it and took over. I didn't expect His Majesty to read that book of mine. Yes, I think that many of your actions are written in compliance with this book, and this book is very clear about the plight of Germany. Strictly speaking, I'm also a German, so I will naturally read this book. And I also deeply believe that other ethnic minorities who do not identify with Germany should be strictly restricted. Especially famous Jews must be strictly controlled. Seeing Edel taking the initiative to bring up the Jewish issue, Hitler and Mussolini felt a little weird, because the current Jewish environment in Romania can be described as the most excellent. There is no anti-Semitic behavior in Romania. Seeing the doubts of the two, Edel could only continue to speak. Our country has nothing to do with these Jews. You all know that our country does not have a large population, but due to the expansion of the army and the expansion of related industries, the country has changed from a labor surplus to a labor shortage. Our country cannot move these Jews, otherwise the gap will become more and more bigger in the end. It was Hitler who was quick-witted, and I saw him point out Edel's purpose. So Romania is going to take some Jews from our two countries? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.